Good afternoon. The work session and rule development workshop for August 27, 2019 is now in session. Pam, roll call please.
Mrs. Belford? Present. Ms. McDougall?
Present.
Mrs. Deskovich?
Present.
Mr. Susan?
Present.
And Mrs. Campbell? Present.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have 7 policies to review during the policy work session and 6 policies for the rule development workshop portion. The work session will be the board's first opportunity to provide input and suggested revisions to these 7 policies. These policies are scheduled to come before us again at the rule development workshop on September 10th, 2019, and will then appear on the September 24th, 2019 school board meeting for action. The 6 policies presented during the rule development workshop will be the public's first opportunity for public comment and will come back for action on the September 10th, 2019 school board meeting. These 6 policies were originally presented at the work session held on August 13th, 2019. Let's start our work session. First is School Board Policy 2260.01. Carly Green, Director of Labor Relations, will provide us the purpose of the proposed revisions. Dr. Green?
I think it was
Yeah, it's me.
Sorry,
put me
Miss-
on hold.
Alright, so this is policy 2260.01, non-discrimination grievance procedure. This policy is being revised to clarify the procedures regarding the process a student will go through to file a complaint alleging harassment or discrimination under Title IX Education Amendment of 1972, which prohibits gender discrimination in public education. Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, which prohibits discrimination against students with a disability, and or the Americans with Disability Act, ADAA, of 2008, and the appeal of any determination regarding the complaint. The title of this policy is proposed to change from non-discrimination grievance procedure to anti-harassment and non-discrimination appeal procedures in order to more accurately identify the purpose of this policy. Other changes include setting forth the school compliance officers and the district compliance officers, restating the responsibilities with respect to the maintenance of written complaints, and other changes in compliance with applicable federal and Florida law have also been proposed. These proposed revisions encompass the suggested language from Neola. If we go down to the red line version, there you go. You're going to see the introduction brings in the 504 American with Disabilities Act language. It also defines what an appeal is to the process. Number 4 and 5 designates that one is a school compliance officer, and then we have the designation of a district compliance officer. So if at the school compliance officer their decision is appealed, it goes to a district compliance officer. Most of the rest of the changes in this are either grammatic or clearing up, and the word grievance is taken out throughout and put in with the word appeal.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Ms. Moore? Okay, next is Board Policy 2431, Interscholastic Athletes. Interscholastic Athletics. Chris Moore, Assistant Superintendent of Student Services, will present proposed revisions to this policy.
All right. I don't know, Pam may have to bring that one up so that we have it. She'll show you how to do it and I'll start reading. This policy is being reviewed to include language that mandates heart screenings to assist in identifying any students who may be at risk for a cardiac condition. Particular areas of revision include the following. Requires BPS students will now be required to have an ECG screening before they can participate in athletics and must complete an ECG consent opt-out form each year in addition to the other forms in their athletic packet. I know there's a lot of interest in this policy, and rightly so I'd like to take a little bit of time walking through our work to date and break it down by discussing 4 separate areas before getting into the draft language of this policy. We want to review how we got to this point of presenting a draft policy 2431, interscholastic athletics. We'd like to review the rationale for the language we used in the draft, the data that the ECG administration as it relates to our current draft policy, and the areas identified as next steps or in need of improvement. So to start, bless you. The April 9th board meeting concluded with a discussion on heart screenings for athletes. BPS and Who We Play For had already been working in collaboration on a draft MOU, and several members of our community had come to speak on the issue. The board directed Student Services to get a completed MOU and to get our fall athletes screened as we work toward getting policy language in place. The directive was summarized at the end of the meeting with, it is the board's desire to have mandatory screenings for our athletes in the district, and it is your job to figure out how to make that happen.
Is that a quote?
And we tried. The MOU between Who We Play For and BPS was approved on April 23rd, 2019 board meeting. It included the language that BPS encourages heart screenings for all athletes. Subsequently, we got the ECG consent opt-out form in the hands of the ADs the next day, along with a memo informing schools of the board's directive. BPS, specifically Bill Maharis, and Who We Play For worked all summer long scheduling screenings, managing bumps in the road, and gathering data and feedback. So our language. As we drafted the language, we attempted to review several sources. Our first was Neola. You may have noticed this current policy looks nothing like our past policy by and large, while by and large, most of the language hasn't actually changed. Our past policy was, quite frankly, a cut and paste of Neola language. We corrected that with minimal BPS additions, with the exception of adding the ECG language. Next, we consulted model policies across the state, and needless to say, there aren't any. Brevard would be the first school district in the state of Florida to add ECG screening as a requirement in policy. So we're the first, and so there's that. But that did add a challenge to drafting the language and making it mean what we wanted it to mean. We looked at other language in statute, policy, or procedure where parental choice came into play. This included Florida Statute 1003.22, school entry health examinations, immunizations against communicable diseases, exemptions, and the duties of the DOH. This included the language that a child shall be exempted from the requirements of a health examination upon written request of a parent of a child, upon the written request of the parent of the child, stating objections to the examination on religious grounds. The same language covers an exemption for immunizations later on in the same statute. We also reviewed language honoring parental choice in our own memos, including the school board directive as to how schools will accommodate the parents' wishes to opt out of standardized testing, or the active consent parents must give their child to participate in the elementary component of the human sexuality curriculum, as mandated by the state. We wrote our draft language to be consistent with the parental choice language we reviewed, while still trying to meet the intent of raising both awareness and participation of heart screenings for our athletes. So our data. We sent some of this data to you guys yesterday upon request about our athletic participation in ECGs. In high schools, 78% of our fall athletes received an ECG screening. A few highlights include that Bayside High School had a 90% participation rate. Another highlight is the fact that our 3 high schools with the highest numbers of low socioeconomic students had between a 74 and an 86% participation rate, and I know that was a concern. And we had 1 middle school with a 100% participation rate, and that is the great Southwest Middle School. And you should know Kennedy wasn't far behind at a 98% participation rate. Perhaps the most significant data point is the number of students who came back as needing a follow-up for further testing or designation of at-risk, and the potential that knowing that data holds for our students and our families. The data also helps us understand where work needs to be focused, and that leads us to lessons learned. We surveyed all the athletic directors and asked them what went well and what we can do better. Their area for improvement really fell into 3 categories. the timing of the rollout. We acknowledge that we asked them to pull off a Herculean task. I'd like to publicly thank both Bill Maharis and Who We Play For all they did to make this happen. More importantly, I'd like to thank the athletic directors and the coaches who stepped up, believed in the mission, and moved mountains. The second area of concern was the consent opt-out form itself. There were different versions of that form floating around, and it caused confusion. The form didn't take into consideration that parents choosing to complete an ECG at another facility weren't opting out, they were just opting differently. Additionally, as we move forward, we have another concern about equitably accommodating our student athletes who qualify for free and reduced lunch. And that is currently documented on the consent opt-out form in light of our most recent conversations with Who We Play For. We are currently working on that form, and we believe we'll have a completed copy upon the approval of this policy in this draft language. Finally, there were concerns over communication and documentation. We are reviewing the best way to track this information and follow through, including a suggestion to house this in AS400 with data files from Who We Play For. After making our way through policy language, we'll work with ET, if it's even possible, and with Who We Play For, to see if there is any better way to support our families and coaches and ADs through this process. So now I'd like to talk about draft language. As you begin to look at the red line version, you're going to see this policy was such a mishmash of stuff. We literally deleted and added the whole Neola red line version. I want to just point out, if you go to the clean version, it's easier to see.
Most of those changes are just, you know,
Yeah,
reordered it, right? You just.
Yeah, I just want to point out the areas that BPS language was added in. On number C, on letter C, there was language put in about 7th and 8th grade students and how we expect them to be accommodated, and everybody gets to play kind of language. That's BPS language. As you go down to H, eligibility and regulation, number 2 and 3, that right there about the EPO, and the language underneath that about participating in athletics through home ed and virtual, that's BPS language as well. And I'm going to skip over the ECG language and move to J. If you go down, that J, recruiting prohibited and penalties, that was actually always part of Neola, but not part of BPS. So that is the policy we follow, that is the practice we followed, so we've added it into policy.
Is that just recruiting between schools, between our high schools?
It, based on the definition of recruiting, yes. So let's go to number 5.
Oh, which letter?
5.
Just number 5. Mm-hmm.
I do want to come back to the middle school A and B teams in 7th grade, but we'll do it after this.
Okay. 5A, the only change to A was the addition of the words legal guardian. B is where we put a heart of our draft language. Any student wishing.
Wait.
Oh, sorry. Where 5A and B
5A.
there?
There
Okay,
you go.
sorry.
Sorry about that. Get it together, Robin.
B. Any student wishing to participate in middle school or high school athletics must have an ECG screening or acknowledge they wish to participate without doing so, despite the benefit of these screenings, prior to participation. A parent or legal guardian must sign the ECG consent opt-out form acknowledging that he or she understands the limitations of ECG screening and that sudden cardiac death or other cardiac events may still occur despite the screening. The ECG consent opt-out form must be completed each year as part of the student's athletic package. That last line was to ensure that every year parents had to make the conscious choice of whether or not they wanted to follow through on an ECG. In C, That language does exist in Neola, the first sentence. Any student who is found to have a health condition which may be life-threatening to self or others shall not be allowed to participate until the situation has been analyzed by a medical review panel that has determined the conditions under which the student may participate. Again, that's Neola language, and it is in Florida Statute 106.20. We added the very last sentence to it. For any student with a health condition who has not been authorized to play by the parent or legal guardian, if the parent, legal guardian of the student objects in writing to the student undergoing a medical evaluation because such evaluation is contrary to his or her religious tenets or practices.
So they can opt out of the follow-up after it's been identified? Is that what that says? So we give them a chance to opt out from the beginning or even after it's found and then opt out. They can opt out. Because C says they have to be cleared, but now you're saying they also could opt out from being cleared, basically.
That's based on Florida statute.
Just to clarify, Ms. Moore, I think Ms. Deskovich's question is, if a student is screened
Correct.
and there is a, I think is the term high risk?
Yeah.
If they're identified as high risk, the parent can still opt out of either further medical treatment or further evaluation.
That is, what C says is that we will not be held liable if the parent says to us, I'll read the exact sentence, the district shall not be liable for any student with a health condition who has been authorized to play by a parent or guardian if the parent or guardian of the student objects in writing to the student undergoing a medical evaluation. You are correct. Thank you for bringing that up. It is not after the high risk. It is that we're not going to be held liable if they've opted out and then we're found to have a condition.
So they don't, once they're identified as high risk, and they have to be cleared, they cannot play until they're cleared.
By a
There's
physician.
nothing a parent can do at that point until they're cleared.
Based on the draft language that we have in front of us, that's correct.
But it's based on policy, on statute as well, right?
It's based on statute it's based on statute 1006 if they're found to have a life-threatening condition. So the statute is in place for any condition that a parent might know or that a doctor might find on a routine physical. ECG is not mentioned in statute.
So an at-risk ECG, is that considered life-threatening? I mean, it's kind of like an abnormal, right? Usually you have to go back for more. We can't prove it's life-threatening at that point.
I
There's
have
actually-
an abnormal EKG every single time, and it's not life-threatening. It's my
So
normal.
would she have to go get a follow-up every time and be cleared?
There's
because it came back
there's
abnormal?
three ways the information comes back. The first way is cleared. The second designation is there's some concern, you may want to look into it, and the third is at risk. And the at risk category means you need to go get another.
What do we do with the some concern level ones?
Oh, we ask them to go back and be tested again.
Can they
to go see
play?
their physician.
Can they play?
Right
without
now, the
doing
way the draft language is written and the MOU is written, no.
It's a 90-day period to get follow-up to address the issue. And then they can play.
Do you have more, Ms. Moore, or are you ready for all of our many, many, many questions?
I know we have many, many, many questions, but I'm going back into the MOU because I want to make sure that, because I don't believe, we did not list out the 90-day period in the MOU. It actually says BPS is responsible to obtain releases, promotion of tests, and upon receipt of notification from who we play for that a student must follow up or is at risk, is not allowed to participate in the sport until he or she receives a medical release indicating that the student did in fact follow up with the physician and the physician has released them fully to participate.
And where is that?
That is in the MOU that we signed with who we play for.
So it's kind of in our procedures.
It would be in procedures,
So there's
not in
no
policy.
time limit, they just can't play until they're cleared.
That is how the MOU was written.
So they wouldn't be ineligible ever, like you wouldn't be kicked off forever. Is that true if they haven't?
Because
Because I'm having parents call me who are hysterical at this point.
Right. We don't have policy language. So that is the piece that probably needs to be written, needs to be written into policy. Right now, the only MOU that we have makes them not allowed to participate in the sport until he or she receives a medical release indicating that the student did in fact follow up with the physician and the physician has released them to fully participate.
Just to clarify, ineligible would have probably a stronger connotation than not allowed to participate.
Correct.
Ineligible is very often associated with grades or something like that, that it does have a period of time a student is ineligible to participate. This is, this is not that level of.
Just so you know, that word ineligible has been being used.
I understand.
So there's some miscommunication among athletic directors.
And that's one of the very first areas that, like I said, the timing of the rollout, the pace of the rollout,
Right.
miscommunication happens. All right, so I'm ready.
Okay, who wants to go first?
So I'll go.
Thank
I'm
you.
always a trust. So I got a phone call. And this student came back with, not normal EKG. And so they got a phone call saying you need to get checked from the hospital that starts with an N. Nemours, thank you so much. Nemours. He says, well, why are you calling me? I don't go there. I've never had my student there. Why do you do that? Well, we have information that the EKG came back as normal. Well, tell me about it. Well, HIPAA, because of HIPAA, I can't release. Excuse me, I'm a doctor. I signed the form. This is my child. I need to know. Well, come to find out, they don't have the information Nemours does. Who we play for keeps the information. So they wanted to know, this is a doctor. He's a doc, this is their kid. So they wanted to know what was the test. They called and reached out to who we play for and has never received a phone call yet. This was 10 days ago. So school, their son, this is a big deal for their son to be playing in sports. And now he's being told, and this is where ineligible has come in, that he's ineligible unless he gets this done in 90 days. And so the parent has several concerns. One, I want to go to my own doctor if I'm going to have this done. And they're not disagreeing that an EKG is a bad thing. They're just saying that why am I having to go to Nemours? Why is there a short window? What if my son is scheduled, but we can't get in because of doctor's offices? So this has not been smooth, and I think we have I think there's more than one parent out there that has that concern. That's where I'm starting.
Thank you, Ms. McDougall.
Can I just, for point of clarification, he was a doctor
Yes.
whose kid received a EKG positive test and was told the only way that they can come back is if they go to Nemours to receive the piece
That was the implication.
from the Nemours people. So the
And
only-
Nemours didn't even have the information of what was abnormal about the test.
So, I don't know, I mean, who we play for is there, is there anything in our, I'm sorry, Ms. Moore, is there anything in our policy that prohibits an individual from going to any other place to get cleared or procedure or?
No, this wasn't a single source vendor at all. This was an MOU allowing who we play for to come onto our campuses to help with ECG screenings. It was not a sole source or a single vendor contract.
But where do the results go for my child after his ECG?
Let me see if it's written in the MOU, because I don't know that it was actually written into the MOU. This is, I'll read to you the portions of it that I think apply to this. Who we play for will ensure that all interpretations are sent to the parent or legal guardian of BPS students within 3 to 7 business days of the initial test, along with the copies of all ECG information on various interpretations and recommendations for further testing as applicable. In the event of student identified as needing follow-up or with a high-risk designation, qualified Who We Play For medical staff will call the parent legal guardian to inform them of the interpretation and recommend a course of action. This in turn will be followed by an email from Who We Play For to the parent and legal guardian providing the same information. Said results shall be provided by email or U.S. mail to the parent legal guardian at the address noted on the consent form. Who We Play For staff will then inform the appropriate BPS staff at the school via an email with the same information.
So a parent will receive, do we know, are they receiving results within 3 to 7 days, and that's mailed to them?
Not for this one.
I just had Sydney's done registration at Madison, and I got the email within 3 to 7 days. Hers was low risk. But my son's, who I had done last year, I did not get an email. Unfortunately, I was able to text Evan and say, hey, I've got to have his ECG for ROTC. Can you send me the information? And Evan got it to me right away. But obviously there are,
And the gentleman you talked to still hasn't gotten it.
I think, we've also had, I think, between 5 and 10 kids that have actually gone out and had surgery and been redone. And were all those do we know if those locations were all at Nemours, or were they at different places?
Here's what I could say. We're getting really dangerously close to FERPA and HIPAA violations. We have the data. We know where the students go to school, and there's such a small number that we're in danger of identifying them if we dig and get into this any further.
I think what Mr. Susan was asking was, where was their care provided? Was it provided at Nemours, or was it provided elsewhere?
I think you're not getting into FERPA if we just say that they had gone to other places other than Nemours.
I'm going to tell you that if I seek that information out,
Okay.
I think I'm in violation of.
But there's nothing on our books that says that
There's
they have
nothing.
to,
There's
so-
absolutely
okay.
nothing that makes us a sole provider.
How many pediatric cardiologists are in Brevard? I'd probably say none. There's no pediatric. We have one pediatric neurologist. We have one. I don't know of any.
I've got a whole cardiovascular center that's at my, right on Vieira Boulevard.
Do you have a pediatric cardiologist there?
Look into it.
I bet you don't. If you do, maybe you have one that comes over one day a week or something. Just with my experience, we don't even have a pediatric gastroenterologist. I'm taking my son to Orlando right now for that. So I think,
I see what you're saying.
I just don't think
Might
there's
be
that many
yeah.
options, right?
So just looking at C, the way we
In
have
the
it.
policy?
I'm sorry, 5C, right there. Any student wishing to participate in athletics must have an ECG, no wait, hang on, C. Who's found to have a health condition which may be life-threatening to self or others shall be allowed to participate until the situation has been analyzed by a medical review panel that has determined the conditions under which the student may participate. So before ECGs, before we were talking about this, what does that look like so far with other things that may have been brought up in physical?
Can we stay on the one we were just on?
Yeah, well,
Is that
this
okay?
is
I just wanna
related because
finish.
I want to know, this is related to if someone finds something that happens, then what is this going, we already have it in the policy. So
And I agree, I just wanted her issue to be addressed, like somebody needs to answer that guy, right? And I don't know in our policy, so if he needs to be,
It says that who we play for, or it's not our policy, but our vendor is
MOU.
supposed to be handling it, and so our vendor is who we play for. I think what's confusing right now is we are talking about our policy and we're also talking about our MOU vendor, and we
Right.
need to keep those very separate, because if one day there's 5 organizations that do this, we would probably have to send it out to bid and pick one at that point. I don't know that, and so we need to have a policy that stands alone from them and not create our policy around them.
does it have to be a pediatric cardiologist, is that what you're saying? Or can it just be a cardiologist?
Should be a cardiologist. Will they see, it's my experience with my children, that regular doctors they won't see my kids, but we don't handle pediatrics. So I don't know with cardiology, it's one area my kids haven't had to deal with yet, luckily.
Okay.
That's a good
Just anecdotally, I'll respond to Ms. McDougall's concern about I'm aware of that parent, I believe, as well, and I've already made Ms. more aware of it, and we are addressing that specific incident to provide follow-up. So not to be dismissive of that concern and any others that may be in that situation.
And I appreciate that. But there's another student who unfortunately is in a position where he won't be able to make it within a certain time period. And I want to make sure that this, just because of situations of what's going on in his life, to be follow-up care to check, because his came back again abnormal. So I want some gray area here. I don't want it to be all black and white that a student, if there's a set time limit that if they don't do it, they're totally ineligible.
I don't think our policy says 90 days, right? Like that's been the
Neither our
message, but
policy
that's
nor
not-
our MOU says
Alright.
90 days, and I'm concerned when people develop policy and procedure by word of mouth. So right now, neither our MOU nor our policy says 90 days.
Okay, so we
And
need
it-
some education then to our athletic director.
I think it's going to take the form of the language that we put in our policy.
Good.
And we'll build all of our procedures out from that language.
Did that spreadsheet tell us how many kids were referred out total?
It does.
Yeah, it does.
So the follow-up and the high risk, so it's 68 plus 13 so far? Is that the?
It's 95 in secondary for follow-up and 12 for high risk. And then, I'm sorry, in high school, not secondary, they're both secondary.
What's the 68 and 13 that I'm looking at? Screenings report, I'm on the first tab. What are you looking at?
I'm on database on athletic packets.
Yeah, I go to that one because it's more updated, has more.
Ms. McDougall, did you get what you needed?
So my question from that, it's all tied together, I
Right.
think, Matt. is it 95 you said?
It's 99 total between middle and high school requiring
So
follow-up.
we're sending out 100 patients, 100 referrals that need to be done preferably before the season starts. And my guess is, are we doing these annually, or are we doing these like
We're
before
d-
basketball, before football?
Before each season, yeah. There are schools that already have 2 or 3 scheduled throughout the year. So there were a couple of questions, and I want to, because I think my answer to Ms. Campbell's question is going to wrap around to this question, but I don't remember exactly what you said. I apologize.
So it's okay. So in that 5, and I can't see it from here, but 5C, where it talked about the medical review panel.
Right.
I guess I wanted to back up a little bit and say, what does that look like before?
Yeah.
With any other issues, and so how can
Great question.
we look at it with the ECG?
So currently, we have a practice in our district of holding a mass health screening for our athletes. So a school will call in a doctor or a chiropractor or some other qualified person of various different levels of doctorness. And they will, if they are qualified, they will hold the screening. And so when there is a cause for concern on that, and that's part of the FHSAA athletic packet, then those students will be referred to their healthcare professional, because their family doctor will have more information, not just on them, but on their parents and maybe past things that they've been through, and will have the opportunity to follow up and send them to a specialist if necessary. So a screening is just that, it's a screening. And it's supposed to kind of point you in a direction, but it does not take the place of an actual, medical workup. And so the students who, I know the language says pursuant to a, what does it say, panel? A medical review panel. That's statute language. What we do is we send them to their regular doctor, their family doctor, or if they choose to refer them on to a specialist to get cleared.
And what do they have to provide back to us?
Another release from the doctor.
Okay, so we have another form?
No, the doctor just sends a release to
Okay,
us.
okay.
That's correct, Bill, isn't it? Is there another form for them to fill out, or is it just a release? Yeah.
So can they go to their pediatrician after it? Same question. After this ECG, or they have to go to a cardiologist?
It isn't specified.
Nor should it be, it's not our call. If they want to get an EKG
Health First, or they wanna get an EKG in their doctor's office, or by a physician's assistant to have an EKG machine who's licensed and legal to do it. That
Is
shouldn't be our
that the
call.
next step? They just go get an EKG?
They have to follow up with a physician and be clear. So for example, if they go to their family physician and they do an ECG in that office, they may or may not do an ECG in that office. They may say, you need to go have this done someplace else. On the other hand, they may do the ECG in that office and say, looks clear to us, we're gonna do a release. They may say, there's some issues, we're gonna refer you on to a specialist, or they may say, we don't do it, you need to go to this other place to get it done. But, you know, as a parent, when you get one of those reports, your very first step is taking them to your family physician. In my opinion, draft language isn't specific. That is what happens with our physicals right now in athletics.
And it seems to me that it would be good to be consistent with what we have done before, because, you know, we have a student who has a history, their doctor's very well aware of their cardiac history, whatever they can clear them or they can refer them on. You know, that would be, you know, make sense just to keep it consistent with the language that we already have for any other condition that may be found.
I'm just worried about the length of time, because if you have to, it takes months to get an EC specialist sometimes, and if we're screening 3 weeks before the season starts, or I have no idea, you can get in to see your pediatrician usually within a month, but you're not going to get in to see a pediatrician and a specialist. I mean, the season's long gone.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if it's not the high risk, it's just there may be an anomaly of some sort category.
Can I bring this up at this time? Would be the requirement that a nurse practitioner, physician's assistant, or medical doctor be the ones that review these both ends? Because, just so you guys know, one of the biggest fears that I have is we have chiropractors that give us our mass physicals, which is, I think, a vulnerability when I was a coach. But what I'm afraid of is we may have chiropractors that decide that they're going to review this information, or I may have a parent from Viera that goes out and buys an EKG machine and says, okay, you're clear, you know. So I think if there's a way that we can put that in there, that would really help, and that covers all medical individuals.
I think we're overstepping our bounds. I don't wanna limit who can do things. Again, we're hold harmless if the doctor releases them. And that is, you would hope parents would take their child to the appropriate person, but I think that's overstepping our bounds. If we are limiting that this can't do it.
I think that's something that could be put in the MOU with your vendor. Like, if you are going to be our vendor, we want you to only have people that review them that are medically certified in this way. I think that's an appropriate place, but in our policy, it doesn't seem like.
I think it fits in policy. I mean, I think that instead of having 15 MOUs with that inside of it, I think that we do. I mean, I'm just telling you as a former coach and being out there, they literally, it's like a trough of kids coming through, and that's part of what we're trying to do here, is to catch some of those kids. And if we don't have them reviewed by something, or have some kind of catch, we will end up with chiropractors and other individuals doing it. Ms. Edval, did you have something you wanted to say?
No. But our vendor is the one that's responding back. Like, we are just saying, hey, screen these kids. The vendor is screening them and giving the parents the information. They're looking at them and giving the information back. So if it's in our policy.
But are we signing MOUs with every single vendor out there?
No, the difference is that who we play for was coming onto our campuses. You know, if a parent chooses to take a student, their child to a hospital or to a medical facility, that's their choice to go and use that facility. But because we're bringing who we play for on our campuses, we created the MOU to say this is how we're going to act with one another. Because again, it came from a place of, you know, wanting to do the best thing for kids, but also wanting to make sure that we were protecting both our schools and our district and who we play for as an organization, and just get some agreed upon common language.
And I think Cheryl, to the point that I was trying to make is that I don't think a parent or a chiropractor or a lot of these individuals should be the ones to read these EKGs to begin with. And that's the reason I was trying to put that in there was that I was fearful that happened. Evan, have you guys heard of anything throughout the state, anybody doing something like that? Have you run into that?
Yes.
What can you
We
tell
talk
me?
about this in Osceola and anecdotal stories from athletic trainers and student athletes that go elsewhere where it's not an MD giving ECG and having a really high normal rate where it kind of became the wild west because there wasn't a minimal level, there wasn't agreement in the policy on what is the minimum level we require for this ECG screening.
Our standard of care is to take the screening and give it to a pediatric cardiologist who reads it. We get the information back and disseminate that information. And that's a minimum standard of care that we've agreed to through the MOU.
For you guys, I talked to the head of a couple of associations, medical associations yesterday on this, and they all agreed that that would strengthen our policy, and it was a big fear that they would have people that are not medical providers that are actually doing that.
So you're talking about for parents and students that choose to go outside of getting it done at school, like we would play for?
They're already doing it.
So
We have
that's,
them
see, that's
already
the
used.
form. I know I've heard some coaches at the AD meeting said that they had a kid who went down to the firehouse and they did the EKGs at the firehouse. But if we have part of this is after the policy is developed, you're going to be developing a form.
Right.
It's the standard form that will show I signed off on it, and that can be the who we play for people signed off, or it can be their doctor or whoever. And so
Then they're liable who signed it. So
Then
if
the-
somebody non-certified or the fireman wants
right.
to sign
So and
somebody's
I'm assuming that we
EKG,
can have
they're
a form
liable
that
for
says
the
needs
results.
to be signed by.
People would do it.
They'll have to identify who they are.
Yeah, there's gonna be, so what I'm hearing you say is put it in the form, not in policy?
Right.
Could be a way to do it. Do you think that, that works? Ms. Moore, Ms. Engel?
Listen, any legal questions, I turn right over there.
I'm just smart. Is there any?
What would the form say exactly? Like,
It has to be read by a NP, PA, or MD, which covers all of the medical professionals that should be doing it.
Do we have the most updated form that's going out right now, or do we not have any release except for the who we play for release?
No, we have an updated form that that was put out by us. We don't like it ourselves. It needs to
But
be
it
fixed.
incorporates other doctors right now?
It does not, and that's part of the reason why we don't like it.
Okay.
Yep.
So when we get the new form, then I think we want to suggest that that's whoever's signing off on that needs to be recommended.
how do we decide who, because I just heard Ms. McDougal say a nurse practitioner should be able to sign off. Is that not?
That's what it said.
That's on your list too?
Nurse practitioner, physician's assistant, or MD. All three organizations, people from BIMDA, from Brevard Medical Association, and a couple of our urgent care centers all agreed that those three covered the majority. Is there any, is that?
A DO.
DO.
Yeah. A DO.
There you go. Ms. Moore. Thank you.
Dr. Alon is a DO.
Is he?
Yes.
Just to let you know, we are reaching out to urgent care facilities, all the pediatricians in the county, every service provider in the county to coordinate this so that they can do the screening and still use our same process, upload the data, our pediatric cardiologist reads it, we get the information back to them. So, when all is said and done, by the time this process is written at your next board meeting, we should have answers and programs in place to address all these issues.
But they don't have to use your pediatric cardiologist, is that correct?
That's correct. We give
Just
a
checking.
list of how many are on that list?
Yeah, I don't know the formality of this, so I'm trying not to interrupt. But there's
Feel
a couple
free.
groups that do work as pediatric cardiologists in Brevard. There's Arnold Palmer, there's Adventist Health, there's the Moores. Or Switzerland, we refer to all of them. And then if you're over 15 or 16, it could be Parish, it could be Helpers, it could be many more. Each of these, from the second the policy was created, we met with and we have asked the athletic directors and the athletic trainers, if there's an issue where a kid can't afford it or where a kid can't get seen immediately, we have the relationship to help them navigate it.
Do you also, so you forward that information on to, you're working directly with Moores. So why are they contacting parents according to Ms. McDougal?
That's an issue that we're
Directly.
that we need to deal with.
We have heard that issue earlier this summer, and we thought we addressed it. I think where this failing communication has happened with the Moores is when they interpret the ECGs, the standard process we have is you're in the follow-up category, you get an email and a phone call. And then in 7 days, if we don't hear from you, we do it again. And then 14 days, we do it again. And then I think Nemours, where this breakdown has happened, is about 2 or 3 weeks if they haven't heard anything, and we haven't reported back in their call. So we need to clearly talk to Nemours and make sure that doesn't happen anymore, as mentioned.
Okay, now we're on into MOU issues. We need to probably get back on this policy language issues. Thank you.
Yeah,
Mr.
let me know whenever we can chime in. I don't want to be rude here.
Mr. Susan?
Yeah.
The last one was Doctor of DO.
Osteopathy.
Thank you.
Are we all okay with that?
I think
I
Ms.
Because I
would,
don't wanna- I don't
I
wanna-
would like to reach out to a medical association to see who is, yeah, what categories can, you know.
I don't wanna miss any.
Right, I don't
But
wanna,
I don't
because
wanna
that's another whole
limit
issue.
them.
That's a good
Right.
idea. So can we just get
Yes.
some direction there between Ms. Enval and Ms. Moore? Just
So Florida statute actually dictates that the evaluation for their physical for sports has to be provided by a practitioner licensed under chapter 458, chapter 459, chapter 460, or 464.012, and in good standing with the practitioner's regulatory board.
And that way you're not limiting it to just a DO or just to a.
can
we
somebody
use
look
that
up
some-
those
We will.
460s?
That's 5C, right?
Yes.
What
But that-
section is that statute?
It's
statute 1003.22 and it's 5C.
But that statute will allow cognitive.
No.
No, it's
It
not?
is
458, 459?
1006.20.
Oh,
The one you already referred to.
Yeah.
okay.
And it is 5C.
5C.
Yeah, still, that'll allow the chiropractors to do evaluation if we went that route.
We'll look up under each of them.
While we're on the form, can I make another suggestion? I love that we are putting this in front of our parents every single year. But I think the information we've gotten from who we play for, who they're getting from the research is the student doesn't really need to have it done every single year. So I think it might be helpful to put on there, next to the opt-out box or whatever, it is suggested, the suggested years are, I believe, 7th and 10th grade, or once in middle school, once in high school. So someone knows, look, if I just had it done in the 9th grade and now I'm in 10th grade, I don't necessarily need to do it right again, but just something, because I don't want people to think that we're saying, oh, you must have 6 of these done in your secondary career.
Yeah, our expectation, and again, we don't even like the form we wrote. We're rewriting it. Our expectation was not that they did it every year. Our expectation is that they did it once in their time frame from 7th to 12th grade, and that if they opted out previously, it would be put in front of them again.
Right.
And then the next year, and then the next year. So we need to clarify that language, and based on what's decided here today, we'll determine, how often we say this must happen.
Who is storing the information, sorry, Ms. Belford, who's storing the information that they've had it done before? Is it the same question you were gonna ask again?
Well,
You and I are like,
Yeah.
If they've had it done in 9th grade or 10th grade, and then a form gets put in front of them in 11th grade, they're not gonna opt out for religious reasons, but how do they, who's keeping that information, who's double checking that information, who's confirming that it was done in 10th grade?
Great question. Right now, it is in our athletic director's hands. We want to take it out of their hands and figure out a way to put it on our health panels in our AS400 system. Our health panels are not currently set up that way. Our AS400 system doesn't play nice in the sand with any other software. So that if I could have the best of all worlds, I would have a data file from who we play for, which is the bulk of all of the ECG screenings, and then we have one-offs at every other school. And so that data file could be sent to us, it could be uploaded into our AS400 system, and then we could just run reports off of it. That is not going to happen given our AS400 system. So we have to work with ET. Wait a second, I'm looking at Russell. He might be like, maybe that could happen.
You do that a lot. I mean, if it's a formatted file, we upload formatted files a lot.
Because then it could go with the student if they transfer schools.
Right.
the
So
record of their
that would be our
health.
ultimate goal, is figuring out how to get it into our special, our health screen panels in AS400. And like I said in kind of my data opening at the beginning, one of our next steps is working with ET to figure out, is there a way to do that easily? Is it data that has to be hand entered one by one? What exactly are we capturing on that panel? To my brain.
Sorry, she's trying to take my computer.
Oh, okay.
So on the form, one of the options could be, I've had it done previously
Right.
and this year, and the AD can go into AS400 if
Look
we
it
get it
up,
all
and
worked
it's-
out
and it's right
say,
there.
You're right.
And it's right there.
we go.
Yeah, that's, after going one round.
Sorry,
There's
I'm
all
making
kinds of
us-
stuff going on
I'm
behind me. After going one round with this, it became really evident that we need a data management system for this information.
How hard is it to create something? Is yours coming over in Excel,
No.
right? How hard is it?
Russell would have to say how to format that data in order for it to speak to
I mean,
our
it could be in
program.
Excel with CSV, we would just have to make a data point that gathering this information, whether it's yearly, whether it just stays on the student, similar to AUP or anything else that we upload.
So is that a huge undertaking to create something like that?
We just have to talk about the process to understand how often we get a file, what overwrites an existing code, just for the
Just the
technical
ins and
stuff.
outs.
Yeah.
But it's doable, it's not the end of the world. Because every time we talk about the AS400, I get like dark clouds and doom and gloom going over the top.
We have to update it to the.
Okay.
Every time I talk about AS400, I get a dark cloud.
All right.
Yeah.
So it's possible.
Can we fix a little thing? Can we?
Sure.
This is the easy one. In F, big F. Can we check out the comma in the first sentence? Offered to exercise and test their athletic abilities in a context greater and more varied than that which can be offered by a school or the district condemned.
You want to take out the comma
Yeah,
after
we-
that? After that.
It is an
Yeah, that's-
unnecessary
yeah.
comma. Thank you.
It is an unnecessary.
I
Are we
used to
done?
catch that.
Did you get yours?
No.
Oh, okay.
Miss Belford has a list of
Did you
questions.
get what you were asking?
Miss Belford.
Yeah, we
has
are.
the-
Like,
Follow.
Go while you can.
So, I have a couple of concerns. First, let me say before I go into my concerns that the team who we play for and all of the district staff that work to get this into place for the beginning of this school year, I commend you. I know that we tasked you with no easy feat, and you all did an amazing job of making it happen. And as I had shared with Evan and Kurt when we spoke previously, I know that the process was not fabulous and we have some kinks to work out. But I think we also have to keep in mind that we have screened 2,000 plus students and identified, several who have needed care to keep them safe. And so I think that is an absolute win. I do want to revisit your number 3 on lessons learned or going forward, and that is the free and reduced lunch. I have significant concern there. Based on the information that I think, Bill, you shared with Chris Moore, if I'm reading that correctly, the plan going forward is to no longer provide an opportunity for no-cost ECGs at the schools? Is that how you all are understanding it?
That's how we interpreted the ask from who we played for, yes.
Okay.
No, we will provide no-cost screenings, but we want to do it through a process that is manageable. We don't have access to who has free and reduced lunch, that information. What we're doing now is forcing the athletic directors to cull through that information and identify who has that condition. Secondly, though, there are 60% of the students in this school system are on free and reduced lunch. And we believe that our mission was to reduce the cost, to write down the cost of these EKGs to make them affordable at $20. However, if you are of need, then we will assist you by working through the Brevard County Health Alliance to identify the level of need, but not only identify that level of need, but provide you access to the full array of family benefits that the Brevard Health Alliance provides. So then you will be covered not only for a free heart screening, but you're now eligible for other free and reduced services, which is the mission of the Brevard Health Alliance. So we're helping them to engage in additional people in the community who really are in need, as opposed to someone who says, hey, I'm on free and reduced lunch, I don't want to pay $20 here. Well, it makes it very difficult for us to continue to provide a service at a reasonable cost. If we've got people that don't really need to, get it for free, asking for it, we don't, it runs us as an organization into the ground. So in order for
So I appreciate the noble mission, Kurt, of trying to connect them with additional health services, but it doesn't answer my question. Does my family who's low income in Titusville get served at Titusville, or do they have to go to Sarno?
I don't have an answer for that.
Because quite frankly, I agree, I saw that concerned me because yours in my area, I don't know if both parents are working, or if.
Well, not only that, I have
Might have a
parents
car.
who literally cannot get from MIMS to Titusville High School because they don't have transportation.
Right.
So,
Brevard Health does provide transportation.
so your ask of me was to make sure that we did not have an opt-out clause.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot support not having an opt-out clause for families who don't have access. And I understand where you're coming from a financial standpoint. I have some concerns though. With 60% of our students on free and reduced lunch, chances are that people that are telling you that they can't afford to get it probably can't afford to get it for the most part. When we met previously and I asked Evan of the ones that we have done up to this point, how many have paid and how many have been free, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Evan, but I think that your number was 90% approximately were paying. And so that is significant. And for many of the students who are on free and reduced lunch, their opportunity to play sports may be their only opportunity to go to college, their only opportunity to do many things. And so anything that would require them to do something for which they do not have the means, that would remove that opportunity for them, is where I struggle. Don't get me wrong, I'm behind you guys 100% on your mission. I think it's important, I think we're doing good work for kids. But
Well, what I would commit to you right now is I would say that yes, they will get it on site at that point in time. And then we also will help them to get the services that they need through the Brevard Health Alliance. A lot of the services that they provide is assistance in obtaining insurance and other things like that. So I will commit to you at this point that anyone who asks for it on site, we will give it to them for free, and we will also help them into that system.
I love you guys, but I just keep struggling with, I feel like we're building a policy around a vendor. It's really, is there anyone else that does this, just out of curiosity? Because if we do all this and you change your mind, you're like, financially, we can't keep doing this, and in 6 months you can't do it any longer. We now have required all of our students to have ECGs with no ability for anyone to help us get them to where they need to be. And we've said you can't play sports unless you're cleared. So we have to make sure there's enough doctors to follow up. But I hate to throw that out there with concerns, but I think that's something we really need to think about.
Yeah, I wanna go back just briefly and talk about one of the partners in this program, one of the partners that has been addressed in this, Brevard County Health Alliance. There's a pretty wide gap between free and reduced lunch and Medicaid eligible, and Brevard Health Alliance typically works with Medicaid eligible, and you have to be a qualified patient. And it's not as just simply saying we're going to send somebody there and they're going to get help. So I appreciate your commitment to continuing the services at the schools. I have to be 100% honest, Bill Maharis has called all over this district to find other places to send parents who might not have made one of the screenings, who might not have had the time, who might not have been convenient. The MedFast urgent care centers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of them have said they will give $20 ECGs and $30 sport physicals. So they are willing at their centers from Cocoa Beach to Melbourne to Merritt Island to Port St. John, Titusville, to do a $20 screening themselves. Dr. Bijou Matthews also does a $20 ECG in his office in Titusville. Atlantis Urgent Care over at Indian Harbor Beach will do a $25 ECGs. So
Can
we
we
do.
put that out on our Seven Athletics?
It's on our,
page?
it's on our website, yeah. But we would like to continue to add to this to just make parents know that there are options available. I agree with you wholeheartedly that we have an MOU with the vendor and we have a policy concerning interscholastic athletics, which has current draft language about wanting ECGs. And I agree with Ms. Belford. We've seen that data gives parents some actionable things that they might not even know are actionable. But I want to be careful about putting too much of the MOU into the policy.
When MedFast just added an extra one, so they're at 11 now. And when I was talking to the owner, Doc Williams, he was telling me that $20 and $30 is combined because he, along with other people in the community, are afraid of the physical forms that are being filled out by some of the other people. So they didn't want, if MedFast is going to do the EKG, they want to do the physical
Physical as
at the
well.
same time. So it's a combined $50 charge. It's not a 20 and a 30. And I asked him, because I was asking, I said, if this goes to your place, who's reviewing it? And he said that he, at the end of the day, reviews every single EKG that comes through as a medical provider. So that made me feel good. That was another one. But I also wanted to say, I was getting a physical for my 6-month-old at a pediatric urgent care in Suntree. And a kid from Southwest was standing across from me. And I said, what are you doing in here? He goes, oh, we're getting our EKG done. And I was like, in here? I mean, I didn't even know. Apparently they did. And I looked in there, I said, you guys are doing EKGs in here? And they go, yep, $25. So it's like spreading to where there's other people that are out there that we haven't even been able to get a hold of.
Yeah. And we certainly can add to the list, and we also need to note on the list if it's a place that is Medicaid eligible, so that people are aware of that. But again, the distance between free and reduced lunch and Medicaid eligible it encompasses a lot of kids.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other area that I have concern on, looking at, and I know it's a process and we're gonna get numbers, right? But we've got 100 kids that were flagged for follow-up out of 3,000, roughly. Which is a pretty good return rate, right? I mean, it's not a crazy amount of people. But that's 100 kids that are currently being told that they are ineligible for participation in athletics. And that's concerning to me. I don't know if there is room, I mean, flag for follow-up to me doesn't necessarily fall in with the language of maybe life-threatening. I don't know if there's some room there. Certainly I don't want to put kids at risk, and I think parents need to understand the risk and make the best decision for their children. But I am concerned about, especially some of my low-income families not having the means to do the follow-up and those kids missing out as well.
Part of the reason, and I don't want to put him on the spot, but part of the reason that we asked Mr. Langdorf here was just to make sure we didn't stray into territory that puts us at liability. And so I don't know if you want to address this part of the conversation about follow-up and if somebody's been flagged for at-risk. Not at risk, flagged for follow-up.
Can I add to that before you answer? Because I'm curious, when you answer this, is there something we can do, like a signature from a parent that says we are seeking, it's going to take us, we got an appointment, it's 6 months down the road. Like, is there some way for us to do that without taking on the liability until they?
Those are hard questions. I really have to look at it a little bit further. To say it this way is, once they've been flagged, this is a medical physician who said they have a problem, they need to get followed. If we're aware of that and we let them play, then we do take on that risk if something happens to that child. Now, we can try a parent opt-out if that's what you want for that, but I'm not sure it can be written enough that somebody couldn't, with a clever attorney, shoot holes in that and say, the school district was still aware of this and allowed them to play. And that would be the real exposure, is what could happen. Because if you know, heaven help us that this would happen, but if a kid collapses and dies in that middle of that process, you've got an angry parent who's gonna look out and blame everybody. And they're gonna hire somebody to represent them, and they're gonna shoot holes because we allowed them to play without getting a full clearance.
Right.
And it's a risk. It's a risk we take.
Kurt, you look like you wanted to talk.
Well, the way we handle this now is we rely once again on the pediatric cardiologist to do the flagging. And the way we have always proceeded as an organization is if there's a yellow flag, then we notify the parent and tell them what this is about. If it's a yellow flag, it's not life-threatening or something that is imminent, but we say that you have a 90-day, so you can continue to play, but you have a 90-day window to follow up with a pediatric cardiologist to get cleared so that they can follow up and do additional testing to provide the assurance that you are able to play and that you have the ability to be treated and or made aware of what your condition is, and you can manage that and learn to manage that.
Do you want to use the example that we just learned of the student that had a condition
That's
that
what the
he'll
90
now need
days
follow-up?
Every year, he can still play, but he'll need follow-up every year. So again, we rely on the premier experts. We don't go, most pediatricians do not like to read these things. They're going to say, yeah, so again, that's why we're reaching out to pediatricians. We just talked today to the COO of MedFast. We're going to implement our system to where they do the screening, we get the screen, the pediatric cardiologist does the reading, then gets it back to us, and we disseminate that information. That's a system that not only keeps everyone satisfied, but it allows us to manage all of the information in one place, so that later on, when you need access to what's transpired with your student, you can reach into our database, or we're trying to set it up to where you can reach into our database, get results, and have proof that you've been taken care of. So again, we're trying to systematize all this and make it as painless as possible for this school board and their systems.
I would suggest bringing a medical expert, or pediatric cardiologist, or someone advised on this to make it more comfortable.
So how long, what the process that you just described, Kurt, how long does that take? So the reading, and then there's something that's flagged, so how long does that take?
Yes, we commit to 3 to 7 business days. One thing that, and there's been a lot of success to this summer, as we talked to you about, Misty, as we talked to you about Matt, but there's also been shortcomings. And one that I spoke briefly here is a big shortcoming is we didn't realize how flawed our system of sending low-risk results was until it became required and regarded. So what we noticed happening was we've never really had an issue getting the high risk or the follow-up results, but the low-risk results, turns out a lot of it's blocked by spam or input error with emails, and we didn't know. So what we've done to try and move away from that is more online signups and have parents put in their own emails, and now our process is, if we screen your child, we'll double check your email with your child. Still not perfect, still working on it. We've brought on people who do nothing but return result emails all day long. I get 50 voicemails a day from the minute this policy happened, and I've had this some, but we've gotten a lot. Not promising to be perfect, but hoping to be excellent.
So, you probably don't have this number, or you can't share it, or you may not have it, I don't know. How many false positives?
It's tough to say. We'll know better when we meet with all the pediatric cardiology groups to give you the exact number, which we hope to do. You know, according to the international criteria, they say about 3% false positives.
So out of 100 kids that are being held up. I think what I hear from us right now, one of our big concerns are these 100 children that are not allowed to play sports until they get follow-up care. And some of them possibly have parents that will never give them follow-up care for a multitude of reasons, can't, won't, whatever their reasoning is. And now we've limited their, especially if they've not been risked as high risk, but they're just flagged for potential.
But if we go back to what we actually have written in the policy already, back to that 5C, it says any student who is found to have a health condition which may be life-threatening to self or others shall not be allowed to participate until the situation has been analyzed by a medical review panel or.
That takes care of that high-risk category, but I think we need to address this, what's the middle risk called again?
Follow-up.
The follow-up category, and I think we need to hear from Mr. Langdorf. Is that that follow-up category.
I don't know what that, follow-up, what would be a follow-up? I guess, can you help us?
Yeah, so-
I don't know what that would look like.
And we should again call in a pediatric cardiologist, let me explain this. I'm gonna do my best, I'm not a doctor by a long shot. So we have 3 categories: low risk, which is about 97% of kids. We have the follow-up, which is a minor abnormality that gets blipped. It's tough to call a low risk ECG, but it's absolutely not a high risk ECG. It's something that I would guess, based on what you said, you might have been flagged as a kid, or when you're, you get older and you are now at higher risk of sudden cardiac arrest or death, but you knew when you were 16 or 17 you had a minor abnormality. So this is the leading cause of death, as you guys have heard say a million times, in adults, and a lot of times these adults are dying of minor abnormalities when they're young. So that's the follow-up. The higher risk is the really obvious. This kid is at risk for sudden cardiac arrest, needs to be pulled immediately.
So the high risk is covered by the policy now, and then we think we're safe there. The question is this follow-up, can we just have we recommend you go do something and not keep them from playing? Because if they're high risk, we don't want them on the field. I don't want them on the field. I don't care if that's their dream to be an NFL star at this
But
point.
is that something to put in the policy, or is that something to add to the procedures or the form that whichever kind of position we're gonna ask to sign off on it?
I think it's a procedural thing, because if we had a different vendor, their categories might be different. I think high risk is high risk, but a follow-up is not necessarily
I know that
Can I
quite
just ask
often.
Ms. Moore, are there 4
Yeah.
categories or are there 3 categories?
There's 3.
Okay, I'm sorry, I thought there were 4.
I mean, there's 3, sorry, there's 3.
So, Mr. Langdor, follow-up. Are we safe just to say, hey, we hope someday you'll go follow up?
There's no absolutes, right? So the real question is, I don't know if I'm completely comfortable off of the cuff to say that, medium risk is acceptable to play. I would want to look at that. Plus, does our current MOU indicate that who we play for will indemnify us if something were to happen if those kids did go?
Yeah, I think that most of that risk is basically assumed by the board, by the pediatric cardiologist.
It does.
And, okay.
But it's not contractual at this point.
Ms.
So
Moore,
could we-
do we know the practice of any other district with respect to the follow-up category?
There are no other districts that do that.
What does Osceola do?
Osceola didn't put it in policy, but Osceola put it into practice. And I will tell you that I don't know off the top of my head, but I know Bill has spoken to them at length.
Yeah.
Bill, what's the practice that Osceola has put into place?
So they do a 90-day follow-up, and the way they track it is their software program, Focus. They can go into Focus. I think some of you had asked, how do we track that? Our Focus isn't focused enough to do that, I guess. And then in talking with Evan and Kurt, they also continue to follow up. I've met with Liz Mayfield, and we have an activity screen, S322. I don't know how that will talk with the spreadsheet that Russell's talking about, but that looked like a pretty good screen where you can put a date, and then you can put a code, let's say ECF for EC follow-up, ECR for EC high risk, whatever. And then you can do it yearly. And then let's say, I think Ms. Campbell mentioned, so you get an EKG, the next year you just want to keep it out there in their mind. So they do an opt-out, so we would have, 814 OPT. So that way, if that kid moves, goes to a different school, that AD can look in and just track every year since, let's say, 7th grade, whatever we come up with, they've had something done. And then the other one that we talked about, same consideration as what you're mentioning, is the follow-up. So I've been talking with Liz, I said, well, we need a code like ECC so that we know they've been cleared within those 90 days. And then with that, kind of like when you run IEPs, 90 days, what's due, then she's looking into, she can run, hopefully looking into running a report that everything that starts with an EC, the report can be run. Or maybe you just want to run the report with the EC follow-up. So those are things we're looking at, because it's a 2-part process, is putting them in and then getting the information out so that we don't have to do it individually.
So the other thing is it's done as the sports come around, because if a student only runs track, they only have to have their physical turned in before the track season, which could be more than a year since we have the form.
Right.
Most kids do it all during the summer. I was a bad parent one time and did it at the beginning of the sports season, and my daughter decided to play another sport. Well, that ran out after I got a call from the AD, I got 6 hours to run her up to somewhere to get it. So most do it, but you're right, sometimes parents don't think, oh, I want to do track, which starts in January.
So to answer your question, what I heard is Osceola has a practice in place, not a policy.
Correct.
And part of their procedures is if they get a follow-up, they have 90 days that they can play.
Correct.
That they can follow up. But again, they don't have a policy in
Correct.
place. Do they have an MOU with who we play for in place? And that if they have high risk, then they sit out until.
Right, and if they don't follow up in 90 days, they're off.
So
Right.
their follow-ups are plain. They're lower.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, so that gives the incentive, but quite often the economic piece of this is what limits parents quite often because it can be expensive. So again, we're aware of that, want to mitigate that problem. Nemours has agreed every month to send pediatric cardiologists over to give follow-up treatment for those that are flagged on a monthly basis. So you have 3 chances to, for free, go see them and get your follow-up as needed before you can start to play.
Now, 90 days does typically take somebody right through season.
Right.
I mean,
So,
that's-
but they could, so say my child came back, follow up, they could go ahead and start playing sports. And then when Nemours is in town next month, I can take them to Nemours for the follow-up if I needed to do so. And I'm assuming you all are communicating that to folks when you reach out to them to give them results of concern?
That's
Well,
if you can't afford it, you can do that.
Right.
You can go anywhere you want, pediatric cardiologist, whatever.
Right.
But yeah.
Can you explain more about that? So you have Nemours comes over, north, central, south, 3 times, dates, what, can you get into that?
So where it's at right now is we just tried this model in Orlando because kids in Osceola couldn't afford the follow-up care. And so we saw this now coming down the pipeline as we learned here. And so what we did is through Shepherd's Hope, a similar organization, the Brevard Health Alliance, or that Orlando Osceola region. Nemours comes there with pediatric cardiologists,
Okay.
and we help coordinate. Same mission, same spirit of Brevard Health Alliance, which is to serve the underserved for Shepherd's Hope. So right now, the same thing is in the process of happening for Brevard, and they can go to any of their clinics. I can't remember how many clinics Brevard Health Alliance has. I wanna
6,
say
I think.
6 or something. So
But
we
they
could
have to be
change the
Medicaid
spots.
eligible to receive the free pediatric cardiac follow-up from Nemours?
I'm not sure.
no, not with Nemours, but with Brevard Health Alliance, they would have to sign up and become a client.
They have to prove their need, basically.
I think, did they answer that?
Well, I thought they did, but then it went a little awry.
If I can answer
There's
this, yeah, just from the information that you.
Just one suggestion, I mean, just thinking off the cuff. Instead of having them play full tilt, maybe they could attend the practices, learn that while they're going through that process, but I don't know, is that an option? So instead of having them participate and potentially put themselves in danger, could they attend in that regard, just like we do with kids who sit out during PE because they have a medical?
Yeah, like if you're injured, then an issue or something.
Right.
I don't, are you referring to high risk or
Follow-up.
follow-up?
The follow-up.
But with the physicals, you can't even try out if you don't have a physical.
If you don't have a completed physical. And again, the 90 days takes you through the season. So you could have a need for a follow-up right now, and you can play all of volleyball, all of football, all of
I think
cross
Mr.
country.
Langdorf's suggestion was they could participate in practice, they can't
But not-
participate in competition.
Yeah, I don't think you'd wanna do that fine here. And you're having the result that the parents don't wanna see anyhow, they wanna see the kid be able to compete. So if the pediatric cardiologist says, hey, you're a yellow flag, that means you can still play, but you need to follow up and figure out what's really going on with you.
So then your option would pretty much be a contractual issue between the vendor. You can try and, if they're willing to indemnify the school board if the kids return to play under that type of a situation, and it could be allowed, that's a possibility, it just depends on how that's written.
Yeah,
Certainly look into them.
our current MOU would have to be rewritten. That's not how it's currently written.
I seldom get to wear my stethoscope in my lawyer's hat at the same time.
Out of the 100 kids that may be flagged for a follow-up, how many of those kids end up with a serious problem and needing to go back here? You guys know any numbers on that by any chance? percentage-wise?
I can tell you like anecdotally, I don't know the exact numbers of Brevard. Typically the way it works in the fall categories, you'll go, if it's confirmed with a minor issue, that could be an issue later in your life, like we explained. But according to the national statistics, 3% of those are false positives. So
But I mean false positives, but what I'm
You say
saying is
in
how
those
many of them
cases,
actually
yeah.
need to go have surgery?
Oh, it's.
How many of them actually, out of that 100?
I'm not sure if that's happening.
Okay.
For more, I have to check our records.
Okay. Sorry, Bill.
No, I was just gonna add, because who we play for has been doing this for several years, you know, before we decided to, you know, put everything in a package. I'm not aware, and unless anything crosses my desk, but in all the years, I don't know, since what, 2017 for sure, maybe 16, I haven't heard of any follow-up that were, I'm not saying there wasn't, it hasn't
Right.
crossed my desk, so to answer your, I'm not aware of any, but again, I don't
So
keep
the
track of all
statistics are
100.
probably lower than the actual variable of 3%, is what I'm hearing you say, okay?
And we'll again defer to the pediatric cardiologist.
Yeah, and Dr. Delani has offered to come in and speak to you all to address a lot of these technical
Yeah.
issues.
I think for me, and Ms. Belford makes a great point, and Ms. Deskovich also, Nemours may be coming over now, right? The concern is what happens if Nemours decides that they don't want to do that, and we end up in a situation for those low-income kids. I do know that Parish, Health First, and other organizations have stepped up.
Yep.
So maybe what we do is, while Nemours is setting this up, it would be beautiful to have them do the low-income follow-up.
Oh, we're already working with Health First and.
Yeah, I know.
Oh.
Health First went to a couple of our schools in the north and did them for free last year,
Yeah.
one of our middle schools. So I know that they will go in and do them. I think it's up to us. Like, you've got a good relationship up there, maybe we can go ask, you know, because I think that is an extreme problem.
You know,
what I mean, with those kids.
The beauty of what you all have done though is you have caused a demand in the market, and we have set a price point that otherwise was not achievable. But now what you have is pediatricians, urgent care facilities, and hospitals offering the same service at $20 to $25. So that in and of itself says a lot.
What was the normal? It's about $160, $180?
Yeah, it can be, and in some cases, if you go to a hospital, it's $600. So it's.
I think we are getting
Yeah, I was gonna
at the
ask if we
policy
could-
and into the procedures and the plan and how it's gonna play out, but just looking at, I look at this policy and except for the comma, you know, I think that this is a great way to incorporate the ECGs into our procedures our policies that we have about how we're gonna follow up with, physicals and all of that, and these little questions and details seem to be something that needs to be addressed when we get the form.
Yeah.
Right, and it's going to be a work of art, right, when it's done, right, because everybody's gonna have their
Right, Amy?
their eyes on
Sure.
it. And then just, you know, and the MOU and the details, but those are outside of the policy, because the policy has to encompass anybody and everybody. You know, it will outlive just this current situation.
Okay, I think we have other parts of this policy that we want to discuss.
Can I-
Did
can I
we,
just run
What
through
did
did
we
we
decide
vet
on
out the
follow-up?
the follow-up?
What did we decide on follow-up?
Yeah, I'm not
Does
sure.
that need to be a part of the policy?
My understanding is right now that it doesn't need to be part of the policy, but it does have to be part of the procedures. That Mark Langdorf is gonna do a little bit more detective work and see where we stand on firm ground. That Amy and I are gonna work together along with, Bill and make sure we define high risk and define follow-up and define what our actions are after those categories get posted. We have a current concern, which are students that are marked in that way. We're going to, Bill is gonna reach out, but we're gonna work with those parents to make sure that we're holding those students harmless while still trying to take care of them and make sure that we're not putting kids out there who are at risk. So we have to do a little detective work ourselves and figure out where these students are and how we work with them to get what they need in order to participate in the sport that they love.
So Mr. Maharis is gonna reach out to 100 kids?
He is going to reach out to he's going to reach out to 16 ADs, and we're going to start generating the list.
16 who?
Athletic directors. And we're going to start working on the list of who is not able to play right now because of a risk factor, because some of them may have already had a follow-up, and we're gonna try to figure out where they are in the queue, and we're gonna try to figure out how to work through this process that we are building as we go.
As you're looking in your crystal ball,
Yeah.
so because the procedures are part of this policy that we're revising right now, do you foresee that we can be looking at those revisions at the workshop on this being subject?
I am ever hopeful.
Okay.
Everybody good with that portion? That answer for now? Okay. Ms. Belford, do you have more on your list before we go over to Mr. Susan? No? Mr. Susan?
So, review panel is their provider, AS 400 checkbox. Russell says isn't that difficult, that we can try to pull that off. Are we first in the nation on this?
I looked at the state of Florida. I did not look across the
Come on
nation.
guys, just tell me it is.
Well, as a requirement, yes, as an opt-out, the state of Texas has an opt-out
Okay.
legislative position.
And we're gonna move forward under Mr. Langdorf's direction with an NPPA, MD, or DO, or whatever that group is that, did I hear that correctly?
That's gonna be included in the procedures and on the form, but we're gonna double check and vet that language.
Just basically to make sure that no.
I understand the intent is to make sure that it's being read by a
professionals who
qualified
actually know what
professional
it means.
person.
We're gonna leave the paragraph.
Yeah, I'll have to call them. And nobody in here's up for the mandatory. One-time file, nope, that's it. All right, I'm good.
I want to talk about the 7th and 8th grade under letter C.
Sure. I'm gonna probably ask Bill to address this, so I'm gonna scoot just a little bit out of the way, because Bill was instrumental in getting that language in there to make sure 7th and 8th graders got playtime.
There we go. Middle school or junior high athletic teams may not play out of county or against out of county teams within the county. Has that always been our
Yes.
practice?
Yeah. I guess, let me think here, 2003, I started in middle school, not as a student, a little longer than that. So I was in middle school for 15 years, and like Dr. Sawyer, it's always been that.
You were
And
in
then-
middle school for 15 years?
Pretty much, yeah. I couldn't play though after my second year. But, and I think, not being a part of when that was initially put in there, because we pulled that from the old policy, was to give those, at middle school, as we all know, when we took 9th grade out, we're left with just track and basketball, that's the only sports. If you go into a lot of gyms like Kennedy, Hoover, you'll see volleyball, placards up, and football, etc. So with those two sports, we wanted to give everybody an opportunity to participate as we could. Track, we let everybody come out with track. If we had 30 kids run the mile, that's perfectly fine, because we want those kids to at least get a taste of what it's like. With basketball, I'm going to assume the fear probably back then was you're going to have your top 6 play and your other 14 just sitting on the bench. So that's what started that process, was to have the first and third quarter group, it's the same 8 kids, and then your second and fourth is the same 8. If you go to overtime, then you can play anybody. But we've had that in place as long as I remember, which I'm going back to 03, and we just pulled that from, the previous policy.
So prior to when we had football, we had volleyball, we had basketball, we had all of it in the middle school because it was 7, 8, 9.
Right.
Right.
We pull 9 out, and then we just say, okay, wait a minute, you 7th and 8th graders, we're gonna get rid of football, we're gonna get rid of volleyball, we're gonna make your basketball team share half times and quarters and everything. And that was what the mentality was.
That was probably in the mid-90s, and I was still stocking shelves during that time. So I'm not really sure, but that could be my guess, was, just like we used to have intramurals, and then we unfortunately lost the supplements, and then that little bit went away. So my guess is when we were down to just 2 sports, is we at least wanted to maintain some type of a consistency so that, if you're on the team, you're gonna play. As we all know, I'm one of those parents who used to tell my kids, I can't wait to get to high school, so, just get a goodie and a trophy when y'all wanted you to be able to compete. But at middle school, at least for now, we have a different mindset. Now, have we brought that up to the ADs or principals? I can't say that we have, to see if they want to maybe change it and go against, or go with the model and say high school. But
I think one of the issues that I see is that when we have the supporting programs not at the middle school but at the high school, when those high school teams start to try to compete against other counties and other schools, we are at a deficit because our learning curve and our athletes are not at the place where they could be if they were there. I think Mr. Maharis would agree to that. I think Mr. Parr, everybody else would agree to that. We actually do a disservice for our kids when we don't allow them to have those sports that are down there. I just don't know why this rotating quarters. What was that? Like the
To
justification.
give everybody an
Everybody
opportunity
can
to
play.
play. And I'll say, I know Dr. Sullivan could really chime in on this as well. Most of our athletic programs run in the red. They don't support themselves. They're not self-sustaining through ticket sales. The little bit of funds that we give them from the district certainly doesn't bring them up into the black, and so they rely heavily on fundraisers and things like that. It just is. It is a program that we support because it's the right thing for kids, and that schools go out of their way to support because it's the right thing for kids. But they're certainly not self-sustaining. They certainly wouldn't be self-sustaining at a middle school. It would require a definite commitment of funds.
Do we have basketball in gym class in middle school?
Yeah, that's rotated through some of the others. I
They're
think
playing
one thing.
basketball. They won't play basketball
Yeah.
in the gym.
What are you
What?
saying? Like, what are you trying
Well,
to
I honestly, when I read that statute, and I'm sorry I didn't let you know, Dr. Mullins, that I was gonna go crazy on this thing. But I saw it the last time and I didn't bring it up because I was buried into the other piece. But this really bothered me, just being a coach, like literally having everybody go in rotations and then it's not competitive. And
I think you expect it, having two boys, like I expect that for my kids that are in the rec league that are,
Right.
I mean, my son plays SBBA, right? I expect that he'll get play time. It's a rec league. He's in 5th grade, 4th grade, he played SBBA, but I just think middle school, are we babying them?
I played a faculty
Just
basketball.
another perspective.
Dr. Sullivan's ready to jump out of her seat.
You may know that I am familiar with a very aggressive, very competitive coach. But
Yeah, I want to know what he thinks about this.
you can imagine we've had these discussions. The thing is in middle school, they can be ruled out and can become phenomenal players. You know, we have seen a great many kids try something for the first time in 7th or 8th grade, or even in 9th grade, and them really accelerate from that. So the goal is to not about, well, you're best or not. You're still figuring it out. Your body's changing, your size is changing, all of that. And so in middle school, we want to attend to that. The 9th grade sports issue is a little different because when they were in the junior high, it was really 9th grade sports, whereas some of the younger kids also participated, kind of like in our juniors, seniors now. But like volleyball, the 9th grade went with the high school. So like in volleyball, we run 3 sports in the high school. We run 9th, JV, and varsity, whereas in a lot of districts, they're not even running JV anymore. So they did keep the 3 tiers. They're just attached to the high school and not the middle school now. But really, in middle school, you want them doing more. You know, really is kind of the philosophy. The more kids can explore, the more kids can try, the more kids don't feel intimidated to go out, because they're all gonna, that develops a skill set that does transcend into high school.
And covers the kids who did not have the opportunity because of finances or family situation to participate in a rec league or some other, who are coming into middle school with 0 basketball experience. Besides
Now, that
elementary
being
school
said, I hated the loss of intramurals in middle and those things. Those were budget cuts. Those were financial savings at a time to save dollars for the district. And so everything is a ticket, everything comes with a price. But in middle school, we want kids to explore, to try, to not feel like they're not good enough to join the team. And you would be amazed at what happens in that 2-year middle school period in developing strengths and confidence.
You
I would
still
also
have to make the team.
Correct.
I mean,
They're still
Not
trying.
really in middle school.
my son did not make it at Hoover in 7th or 8th.
If there's huge
And yet,
numbers,
your husband accepted in 9th grade.
If
so.
there's huge numbers, it doesn't happen at a lot of our schools. A lot of our schools are still like dragging kids onto it? Because you do reach a point that you can only play, you know, X amount of kids.
I played a faculty basketball game in 2012 against Aurora Middle School, and 3 of their players were taller than me. And I mean, I think that our athletes are at a different level now as far as competitiveness, and I think that I just will always have an issue with it. If you guys don't support it, that's fine, but I always have an issue with the fact that we're just doing that. Now, let me ask you this, though. Did we get rid of the 9th grade stipends for a lot of our high school sports?
No, what happened is we couldn't field them all.
Right.
And so they're just the numbers. So some of them decreased simply because they couldn't field enough athletes.
Yeah, because I haven't seen 9th grade. I mean, there's just not that many. So what I'm hearing you say is you were really upset that we reduced the amount of offerings in the middle school when it happened. So,
That's
right?
not what I said.
I think you did. I think I heard
said
you say
things
that.
like intramurals and stuff are great for kids, that are exploratory, that get more kids involved, but everything comes with a cost. I also think where we've saved money, we've done a good job of saving money as well. And so, you know, that's a budget decision, that's your pay grade, not mine. But again, I just.
That's funny.
Thank
When I go,
Well, he asked a question.
when I go
job
to
title, not
job title,
Yeah,
when I go to my middle schools, the one thing that every one of them say is that they wish that they had more sports options. They just do. I mean, I'm not. If you ask 30 kids in a middle school, what would you guys like? Volleyball. I want
Tell them
extra.
ELO into a junior, senior high.
It's just, there's a cost that has to be weighed at a certain level on what's a budget priority.
So,
I can't
one
answer.
thing this does also is if every kid has to play in uniform, that's why my kid didn't make the 7th and 8th grade team, because if every kid has to play, you can only take so many kids. If every kid doesn't have to play, you could take on an additional few kids, and I know from experience that sometimes they're happy just to be bench players, to be part of the team, to be part of something. This doesn't allow them to be part. So-
I can just say from experience as a principal, the conversations that were the hardest were when the parents called in to question playtime to the coaches. Now this is high school, and you know what we say is playtime is a coach's decision, but the vast majority of the parents who called me expected their child to get playtime regardless of their ability level or the ability level of the other people on the field. So high school's a different beast than middle school, but I think that Dr. Sullivan summed it up very nicely. It's the time for people to figure out, if I've never done it before, what is it like and can I get good at it?
Does anyone else have an opinion, or am I the only one
No,
that don't like this
I
policy?
agree with Dr. Sullivan. I think it is a great time for kids to explore. I don't know if I would be good at, you know, basketball, whatever sports, you know, I'm not the biggest sports person, but that would be a good time where that everybody does get a chance to play. And then you develop the skills and you say, okay, this is not for me, or I'm gonna go try it 9th grade, or whatever, because I don't know,
So-
I don't have a problem with it.
Not to disagree with you, but it says should consist of at least 2 separate units. So they could have,
Typically 16 to 18.
so they could have 4 separate units. They could have
Your
6
school
separate
just
units.
messed
They
you
You
could
just
have-
had a really competitive coach.
Yeah, you
No.
really did.
They probably had a full team. The point is my son, if he's watching, I'm sorry, was not a good basketball player, but he was passionate about it. And junior high, they couldn't take him probably, which I didn't realize then, because he wasn't good. And yet, if they had him, he had to play a fair amount of time. Once he got to high school, Coach Sullivan took him, didn't really ever play him a whole lot, but took him because he could be part of the team, which was a ginormous,
Right.
I know
Size
that's
of
not
the
a
school
word,
is gonna make a
help to
difference.
him
I think
and
it's a
his
word.
growth through high school.
Because, you know, McNair only has 300 something kids at their school, it's gonna be a lot easier
Thank
to
you.
be on a team.
Right.
What, you made fun of Jen Downs?
I will say that you're gonna hate what I say next. The other consideration when you're fielding a team is number 1, how many kids are you allowed to have on the team? Number 2, how many uniforms that you have?
Yep.
And then we get down to funding again.
So, what I'm hearing you guys say is that the more opportunities that are for kids, it's better. So if we had more sports,
That's got a
it
whole
would
other
be better.
team.
You can't have one without the other.
If you
If
can
you're not
pull
gonna-
the money out of a hat,
Well,
go for it.
may not need to. You can run a very extreme
Hate
intramural
to remind us, we
program.
have like 15,000 more policies.
Yes.
So
But-
we hammered
But
through
let it
this.
be said that the argument to be made here to keep this rotating two-team thing is to give more kids an opportunity. And if we're gonna keep with that premise, then that same premise needs to be that we give more opportunities to our kids. Now, whether that's through intramurals that doesn't cost us, or whether that's through something, we need to find a way. Well,
So I want to add to the perspective of the experience, because being a former athlete, part of the experience is being able to play and participate. So if the policy, I believe, is to ensure that 16 to 18 students in middle school have true competitive experience on the court in basketball versus having 24 players on the team and the coach can play 8. So just to bring perspective, because coaches are competitive and they want to win, and they're going to play. If there isn't some regulation, I think we could narrow the experience for players rather than ensure more students get experience. And at the middle school level, high school, totally separate situation. But
Is there anyone else that agrees with Matt and I, or shall we just move on?
so, hang on, but funding aside, we agree on the premise that we should offer more? Funding aside?
Funding aside, I think.
Ms.
we
Sullivan,
all-
can I at least get that?
Doctor?
Dr. Sullivan?
That doesn't matter. I just.
If
don't-
financials weren't, just yes or no, Dr. Sullivan?
I say that it's just not that easy, because everything is more time on people, like, it's,
Yeah.
I know you want a quick answer, and I appreciate what you want, and I get that. Just in the reality of it, sometimes we struggle, even when we do have stipends and opportunities, it's our same staff that we ask to do a lot. And so that's not that I don't want to commit right now like on telly, which I don't. I just think it's easy to say yes if we had the stipends, and yes, it would be robust. But I've also seen the situation where we have the stipends and it's our same really overworked staff, especially in some environments, to make things happen. So I just think it's a little more difficult than just a yes or no.
So it's the burden on staff and the finances that hold it back, but we agree that we would give as much as we can towards kids.
I think we do that now. You know, I think that's our premise now, is balancing our budget, balancing our staff, and providing opportunities for students.
Okay, is there anything else?
Sorry, Mr. Susan.
No, you played into exactly what I was saying. All the way down to the last minute.
You got played.
I got it. No, you didn't. It's just that I think I have a solution,
Okay.
and I wanted to hear you say it. That's
One
all.
last question. Is there any of the three of you that agree with us, or should we just move on?
I should we should move on.
Move on? Ms. Belford?
I agree with the premise. I don't know that this policy is necessarily, or that portion of the policy is necessarily problematic.
Okay, so you want to keep the policy, that letter C as is?
I am fine with that.
Okay. And Ms. Campbell, you want to keep policy, letter C, part of letter C as is. Is there anyone else that would like to discuss any other issues in this policy?
The only thing that I hope that we communicate to our athletic directors is that could we change the word ineligible so that students are able to play it? Because it just sounds like, it's like, okay, that's it, done. So sorry, too bad.
And maybe Mr. Maharis and Mr. Langdorf could get with the pediatric cardiologist that's reading the EKGs and get a better understanding of what that follow-up means, so we can,
I do have one more
like,
question.
maybe something in writing from the cardiologist.
Yeah, Bill and I will work together.
How, and maybe we already discussed this, how are we're only requiring this once in middle school and once in high school? Because it doesn't, I haven't found anywhere in the policy, unless I'm missing it, that says when this is required.
We did not write it in. Our intent was that they would get it once for their middle high school athletic career.
Okay.
Once. But if they opted out, they would have the opportunity to opt in every year
Every
until.
year they have to re-opt
Correct.
out. I like that. But do we want to, is that what we want, to have just one time for middle and high? I think the recommendation is 7 and 10, right? 7 and 10?
That's
So-
what the standard of care is from our renowned pediatric cardiologist.
Renowned pediatric cardiologist is recommending 1 middle, 1 high, so. Board?
I think that's something for the form and not for the policy.
I think it has to address this in policy, because we're just saying you have to have it done right now. We're not saying once, twice, 5 times, every year, once in your whole life.
Every sport you play.
Every sport, we have to
Right,
clarify this somewhere.
I tend to think that it makes good sense to try to put it in the policy if we do that, I do.
I like that.
1
And-
middle, 1 high?
I do.
You have the duration already in A.
In A?
Physicals are valid for 365 days.
Yeah, but we
So
don't
that we don't
necessarily
have to
want
run ECG.
them to have to get an EKG
Right.
every single year.
But I'm just saying, you already have a time frame in A, so to
For
add a time frame in B
physicals,
would
but we
work.
need an ECG time frame.
So I'm hearing that I need to add clarifying language in 5B, clarifying that one needs to be done if they play middle school sports, and again, if they play high school sports, they need to do another.
I agree. That's where I wrote
Is
down
that what I'm
5B,
hearing?
or how often in my notes. Yes, that's exactly where I think it should go. Everybody okay with
Does
that?
that language cover the
Yeah,
student who
seven.
doesn't get a screening in 7th but plays a 9th grade sports?
I'm not going, I was not going to add grade levels
Okay.
to that language. I was gonna say prior to the sport and at least once in middle school and once again in high school if they play high school athletics.
Now, what if they do it in middle, they've been flagged, they've gone to the specialist, they've driven them to Orlando, they've paid $1 bazillion, they've cleared, and now 9th grade, and they're like, oh, I have to get it again, and I've been flagged.
That, if we add that language, then yes, they would have to do that again.
Maybe they would, at that point, they would go back to their doctor, and their doctor would say, you've already been through all this, we're
Yeah.
gonna sign you off on this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, everybody good with 1 middle, 1 high? Added to 5B?
But it'll be 5B.
5B, 1 middle, 1 high?
If we don't get through these policies, do we have to come back? after the
We've
board
already
meeting and
advertised, so we
finish them?
have to get to the policies.
Oh my
I
goodness gracious.
don't think all of them are gonna be this long. Does
No.
anyone have anything else in
No,
this
I'm
policy?
fine.
Okay, that was, what policy number?
Really long.
And second one, that doesn't help me to talk.
That was 2431.
2431, okay.
Next one's 31.
Dr. Green?
Yes, ma'am.
Hang on, do you
What
wanna release everybody, because that's the end of
Well, I don't have to release anybody.
it.
They can all
Just
leave.
give them a minute. Are they all gonna wanna sit through the rest of these policies?
Open the public, maybe agree.
You guys realize that the EKG thing's over, so if you guys wanted to leave and you didn't wanna sit through a bunch of boring policies.
Well, we really appreciate the
Mr.
opportunity.
Novelli, could I ask
Well,
you
and that's-
to drive on this one? 3120?
With your staff, and processes are
Thank you.
developed so that we can have some of these questions. We'd be happy to bring Dr. Dewan from the board in.
Yeah, tell Dr. Alana I said hi.
Okay, we are now going to discuss policy 3120, employment and staff. Dr. Green, will you please provide information about the proposed revisions?
Yes, ma'am. This policy is being revised to clarify the procedures regarding the employment of staff to include administrators, interim principals or supervisors, and instructional staff, to authorize conditional approval by the superintendent followed by approval by the board, to clarify certification requirements of certificated instructional personnel, non-certificated instructional personnel, support staff, and instructional paraprofessionals. Other changes include the revisions to the citations to the applicable federal and Florida law, and these proposed revisions encompass the suggested language from Neola. Mr. Novelli, would you mind going to the red line? So if you look at the red line, what this is really doing is codifying what we do in practice. For instructional personnel already, we allow instructional personnel to begin their services prior to board approval as long as they have completed the full application, all the conditions for pre-employment, and they're they're certificated. This would include our other employee groups as well prior to getting to the board. It discusses administrators who are coming back to the district who have not been employed for more than 90 days shall be required to be re-fingerprinted. And then as you follow through the red lines, it brings the certification requirements that the state has changed into our policies.
I love this.
Does anybody have any questions,
I
comments?
do.
Ms. Campbell?
On number A16, so I don't know if it's just the wording of that statement that was added about their fingerprinting, but it's confusing. Administrators who have been fingerprinted by the district but have not been employed by the district for more than 90 days shall be required to be re-fingerprinted. Because it almost sounds like if you're working here and you've already been fingerprinted, but you're not tonight. So you're saying
like
they've
day 3, you have to do it again.
right. You just need to do it again. Right. Does that sound, so if that's, what that's supposed to mean is, if they've been away, they've been unemployed.
So maybe like
Yes, if they were
fingerprint-
previously fingerprinted as part of their employment prior, and they go more than 90 days out of the employment of BPS.
So if we say that, administrators who've been previously fingerprinted, right? Or
Right.
previously employed.
It's
But
the middle part,
separate
the,
from the
but
district
have not,
for more than
right.
90 days? Separate employment from the district for more than 90 days?
Separate, but
Should
have.
it be an administrative candidate who was previously employed but
Is it just administrator?
Because it's anybody who's been an administrator for a district, but they go more than 90 days out working for somebody else,
We
and they
can
come
clean
back.
it up.
We'll work with that.
here.
Just fix it. Yeah, that's my only question.
Good clarification. Anything else?
Anybody else have any questions or comments on this policy? Okay, we will now move on to policy 5310, health services, which will be presented by Ms. Moore.
This policy is being revised to include the language ECG screening for additional screening for athletic students, including the term parent legal guardian and other changes in compliance with applicable Florida law. Particular areas of this revision include the following: to include ECG screening as a requirement for athletic students, expand the parent term to include parent legal guardian, and delete the words, the deletion of the words at registration. These proposed revisions encompass the suggested policy language of Neola. If you go to the red line, you will note that Health Services A reads, the district may provide or request parents or legal guardians to provide a general physical examination for athletics, including ECG screening. All other changes were the addition of legal guardian.
Why would we request parents provide dental examinations? Do we really get involved in that?
This is, if you go further down into it, this is for non-emergency procedures that sometimes occur at a school, like a vision hearing, a vision screening, a hearing screening. We actually don't do these physical exams, particularly at a school. Like
We do the vision and hearing.
But we do the vision and hearing, and so as you go down, the school district, if the school district chooses to provide non-emergency physical exams or screenings, the board shall directly notify the parent and legal guardian at least annually that these are happening, the approximate dates when they're happening.
Well, and I think we do, don't we do dental screenings at
We
Endeavor?
do some.
And I
So it's a may.
We have
Yeah.
a nonprofit that has come in and
Yeah.
done dental screenings at some of the
Sure.
other low-income schools.
This just lays out what our policy is as it relates to those non-emergency procedures that we may or may not ask for a parent. And we wanted to make sure that the language, including an ECG, be added to the portion about the physical exam for athletes.
Do we allow, it says opt out, do we have them all opt in, or we do it and then send something home beforehand to let them opt out?
It's that form
Where
you
are
have to
you-
sign at the beginning of the year.
In the packet,
Saying-
right? We have a
The
packet.
registration packet?
But not, that's only for hearing and screening. I mean, if somebody testing a communicable disease on my kids and I don't know about it, that's what I wanna know.
To my understanding, we don't do that. Most of this language, and I'd have to refer, is old and it goes back to Neola language. We can certainly look back and see if that language should be stricken, if you would like it taken out, but we do not test for communicable diseases in our schools.
But if we, let's say we did have maybe an outbreak of some sort of measles or something like that, we would potentially offer that testing to
But
our
would we
parents that
allow
works at
parents
school.
to opt out? It says that we allow them to opt out. Option at registration to opt out of any screening. If I recall, that form just says vision and hearing.
BMI, yeah.
That one irritates me, the BMI.
But they're given the opportunity to opt out there.
And they harass you if your kid fails that BMI. I mean, like weekly you get notices sent home. Like, have you done anything about it yet? Have you done anything about it yet?
Hey, that happened to me on the vision screen, but,
The intent of this was just to bring this in compliance with the language that we were using in interscholastic sports. If the
I got it, but it's in front of us, and
yeah,
it's
if the
time to
current
look
language
at
isn't right, we can
all of
certainly.
this.
Ms. Klein and Dr. Sullivan, do you see a need for our schools to have the ability to test for communicable diseases? Ms. Duskovich is really struggling with that one. Would you all be opposed to removal
I'm struggling with the
that
opt-out
bullet?
for parents. I want parents to have the opportunity to opt out beforehand, not know enough to call up to the school and say, I hear you might be testing for something this week. I need to make sure. I want parents to be notified. That's
My only
concern.
comment is the only place that I can imagine that would be driven by the health department, and that is not anything I know anything about. So,
I'm okay with the communicable diseases. I want to protect parents. That's what I want to make
Okay.
sure is
But-
happening in there.
So let me.
What it says here is that they are given the option at registration to opt out of hearing, vision, scoliosis, and body mass index screenings, right? It's all part of the same sentence.
I do think that's what it is, but there's no option. There's no ability to opt out of tests for for dental or communicable diseases or scoliosis. For
well, it
that
says
matter.
of any screening.
I don't think.
So
that's
the
all
language
that we
needs
signed
to
for
be
this
added to be all-encompassing of the screenings that are here, is what I'm hearing you say.
I would like to see that. I don't know how the rest feel.
I'm fine with
I don't have a problem with that.
With
Those
with making
screenings
sure
and
that
I'm
the
already
language
uploaded 3
is
twos.
opt out for any of
Yes.
them. Okay.
So,
Katie, can you pass the chocolate?
So adding the communicable
So-
diseases to C.
so I just wanna make sure, so
Um,
what happens if, Lord forbid, we have, like New York is going through, that they have a measles epidemic? What, the health department will take care of that?
Well, we work through the health department. The first thing we do is we'll go into the school and we'll pull all of our immunization records.
Okay.
And we'll make sure that anybody who doesn't have current immunization are, based on Department of Health regulations, excluded from school. And some students can go and get a vaccine and they can be included at a specific time period. Some students, because they're medically fragile or because of religious objections, they won't, and then they're excluded for a little bit longer, and we handle the measles outbreak through the Department of Health, through our schools in that way.
We had a chicken pox last year or the year before, right? And all those kids.
The
couldn't
beginning
come
of
to
last
school.
year, I believe. Yeah.
Okay, anybody
Okay.
else have any concerns with this policy? Ms. Moore, you got that direction?
Got it,
Make sure
yep.
parents can get out of it. Ms.
Yep.
Moore and Ms. Archer, who's not here anymore, she sat here patiently for so long.
It's a group effort.
We'll go over proposed revisions to policy 5517, harassment.
I know this is gonna be, I'm gonna take it a little bit out of order, if
Okay.
I may. Can we go to 5517.01?
We can.
Because it just makes more sense to do it that way.
Do I have to read my statement? Or am I?
No, we're
Okay. You're always so strict with my statements. Especially when it comes to policies, I don't want
We're
to
not,
have to
this
read
isn't
yours.
public comment, this is the work
Yeah.
session portion, so
Just
this is
checking.
working, yeah. 5517.01 includes the DOE model policy that we must use. It doesn't really give us a lot of, it doesn't give us enough information, it doesn't give us a lot of ways to act. So we have added 5517 to it that helps clarify some of the language. So I'll go into 5517, but just know that this is the model policy that we have to include from the DOE. Fair to say, Amy?
That is very fair.
Okay.
And it's been supplemented by our 5517.
Okay. So 5517.01, bullying and harassment. This policy is being revised to include technical changes only, to
Excuse
include
me one
formatting.
second. The state is forcing us to adopt a policy.
Yes, we already have it adopted, yes.
How many policies does the state force us to adopt?
Quite a few.
In their actual form, we don't have the authority to modify them in any
So
way.
we have to adopt it in substantially similar form, and this particular one is one of those that we have adopted in a substantially similar form and then supplement it with our 55.
What percentage would you say of ours are?
All of our statutory policies.
Give me a
So, well, we don't have a model we have a model policy for this.
Mhm.
There's a model.
This is the first model policy of anything that
We've done.
I've presented.
Okay.
Here's a better question. Are we seeing more and more of this happening?
No, I
Okay.
mean, well, we have a model charter contract that we have to follow, model charter contract. And so it essentially substantially similarly looks to that, but sometimes we make some changes that are applicable to us.
But
we
just,
wanted to
it
make
really
sure.
infringes on local control and authority
It
of school
does.
boards if the
It
state
does.
is saying you have to adopt these
And
policies.
that's why
But
we
why
have
are they
this
just giving us
policy.
policies saying run it the way we want you to?
Yeah.
MSD had a bunch of.
There's some model policies that are coming out of there too. So this one is, we adopted in substantially the same form as the model policy that was last revised in 2016, but we have supplemented it with our 5517.
Yeah.
One of the issues that I have with this policy is it is titled bullying and harassment, and that's what exactly what we're trying not to do. So we're changing our other policies to actually say anti-harassment and anti.
Do we have to call? Do we have to call?
It's just technical, right?
Oh, darn.
It says against bullying, it says against.
Yes, so that's what we're trying to, yeah.
So this is just technical, right?
These are just, yeah, we're
These
just
are-
adding the formatting because it is one of these policies that is, again, many pages long and there's no way to go to their,
So we can move on to 55.
go to section 13, or B3 or whatever.
Oh my gosh, do we have to get through the second half of these too?
We do.
There you go.
Okay, 5517.
5517, this policy is being revised to include technical changes only to include formatting. Section 1006.147,
What? Are we doing 5517 or
Oh, I
5517 or
went,
one?
sorry, my book is big.
Now 5517.
5517. Got it. No,
See, I'm not the only one who uses notebooks.
No.
And tabs, folders.
Thank you. The title, the wrong one was put in my book, so that tells you how great the book is. The title of this policy is proposed to change from harassment to anti-harassment compliance officers, compliant investigation procedures in order to more accurately identify the purpose of this policy and its contents. This policy is being revised to restate the board's commitment to maintaining an educational and work environment that is free from all forms of unlawful harassment, to more clearly articulate the methods by which students and all other members of the school district community can report complaints of harassing conduct, to specifically identify the anti-harassment compliance officers at the school and district levels, to set forth the general investigation and complaint procedures, and to refer appeals to policy 2260.01 anti-harassment and non-discrimination appeal procedures. Form 5517F1, student alleged victim complaint reporting form, has been revised and shall be used for reports made by students. Form 5517F2, parent, teacher, bus driver, other staff, witness complaint reporting form, has been revised and shall be used for reports made by other reporting individuals. Other changes include setting forth the school compliance officers and the district compliance officers, restating the responsibilities with respect to the maintenance of written complaints, and other changes in compliance with applicable federal and Florida law have also been proposed. These proposed revisions encompass the suggested language from Neola.
Anybody have any questions or comments for Ms. Moore?
Reporting requirement for this is how many days?
I'm sorry,
I'm gonna turn right to you.
United Way
Would you-
and organized.
Investigation.
Oh, there you are. Thank you.
Once they report it, once we get, and we got 15 days to complete an investigation.
I know on our end, it's just that, I know that our ethics is 30 days, and sometimes that's a tight window. Some of these things are very personal, and is there a limit to when they can file this? I love this.
When the incident happened?
Yes,
You're
so
saying the incident.
How
the
long do they
report
have
filed-
before they have to report the
I
incident?
will tell you, some of these are personal. There is no legal language that says you have to report it within 6 months of the
Okay,
incident.
so it's
So,
not
yes,
30
no.
days. Okay, good.
Because
And
do
sometimes
have-
we had one that was reported years afterwards, didn't
Yes.
we?
We have some, like, a lot of it will hear it, it happened in May at the end of the school year. They thought the summer, and thing one comes back, they realize now the kid is in the same class from now in August, so they'll report it in August for something that happened in May, so we've gotta go back and do our due diligence and investigate.
And is this is a stronger policy than?
Yes,
Yes.
yes, much more
This was-
clear.
this was-
The forms, I think, are better. We've streamlined our processes for investigation.
Why did we take out sexual cyber harassment?
It's a big deal. I think this is amazing. Like,
Why did we take out sexual cyber harassment?
I need you to find that where that is on
Would it follow under
What-
cyber
we-
stalk, or cyber bullying, cyber harassment?
They're not page numbered, so I can't help
I
you,
think
but.
it's still in there, it just
We
moved.
restructured because it wasn't, we felt it wasn't as clear as it could be. So we've taken out and essentially taken out and recopied. So you'll have the general policy things in A. I believe those,
Is the final copy page numbered?
no.
Can we do that, or do we not do that for some reason?
We could, but Neola won't support the page numbering when we're done, but we can bring it to you page numbered if that's helpful.
It's just, I don't really care, it's just would have been easier right this minute to be able to say, because it doesn't, it's not lettered or numbered because it's deleted. There it is. So where has that been re-added? Because I read under, above it, it
Did you read
has.
D?
Right above it or below it?
Above. Take a look at that.
Just type in control.
That doesn't seem to cover it.
Yeah.
Basically, under anything under Title IX that has to do with sexual
There's-
harassment, no matter what format, is covered.
You don't think it's important to, I just think cyberbullying is so prevalent and sexual cyberbullying is
Good point.
atrocious. Like it seems
Absolutely.
like it needs its own,
That's number one.
that destroys somebody. I'm reading the above to make sure.
I just think
Under
it's a
C.
document, it's not for sections.
So did we take it out because Neola?
Sexual cyber harassment is still covered in 5517 in the 5517 01. The definition is still in there. Pursuant to federal law, sexual cyber harassment means to publish a sexually explicit image of a person that contains or conveys the personal identification information depicted. So that's still in the model policy. So that's
Just the
what-
definition is?
There's a definition of all of them: bullying and harassment, sexual cyber harassment.
But if there's just the definition and it's not actually addressed, we've deleted it, then what good is
It's
it?
in this policy, so I guess then we have to see, is there a reference in this policy to 5517?
Yes, if during an investigation reported acts of bullying and or harassment in accordance with policy 5517.01, bullying and harassment, it's number 3 under D.
And just-
Slow down right there. So we
Because
back up. Go back up.
cyber
Stop right
harassment
there.
is more than just taking a picture of somebody, sharing it.
This doesn't go into the
Call.
quote like this that she's.
It is in there.
Just as a
But
definition.
just as a
Graphic or
definition.
sexual commentary.
Can you consider,
We can add it back into 5517. if
can
you'd
you
like that way to
consider
put it.
unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors and all
Yes.
that stuff via text, via cyber?
Yes.
Consider
However,
that?
it would be covered, we would, if it was received via text or
That was my big thing is,
however, but we can add that back into as a definition if you'd like.
Well,
Would you
it
like that
doesn't,
to-
it's weird because it's just the definition that's in this one,
Right,
too.
I know,
It
which is
doesn't-
kind of strange.
Kind of
why we
random
wanted
and
to
just
redo
stuck
the
in
whole
there.
policy. It was in there before, but it's also it's already in 551701.
But we never address it. Like, it's in the policy, just, even in the middle here, it's just a definition, but we don't say.
There's something about it in this policy.
Yeah.
Well, but I believe it is in the Code of Student Conduct.
It is
I
in
mean,
the
it is
code.
part of our school discipline plan.
Sexual cyber harassment is in our code of student.
We have
conduct.
cyber harassment.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
And it still falls under sexual harassment, even though it is not individually identified. It would still fall under that, and still fall under Title IX.
So remarks speculating about a person's sexual activities or sexual history, or remarks about one's own sexual activities, so that, does it fall under that? If somebody posts a picture? Isn't cyber harassment something? legal?
Cyber harassment, it includes the publishing aspect of it.
Was that added to our, that's on our discipline plan, right? Cyber harassment? Cyberbullying.
It's interesting because you have underneath, where am I? Jeez. Under sexual harassment, and you go down to C4, you talk about everything, but you don't talk about cyber, you don't talk about anything about cyber on there, and I'm surprised. Because you do, you talk about graphic sexual commentaries, but, I mean, but you don't bring that. I think that's a good idea to put it in there.
I go back to our hearing last year, and this is different than the kid recording,
The other
but
directions. Okay, slow down right there.
I just think our policies need to be modern with some of this stuff so that people don't get through the cracks who have violated them, and we feel stuck and trapped with words that we didn't include for some reason.
I think we can
We
add
can go
that
through
back.
and make sure
Yes.
that
We'll make
any
it- I think it
cyber
does fall
references.
under, it
Yeah.
falls under 2 sexual harassment, we can make it a separate D or F.
Pictures, videotapes, audio recordings.
Everybody okay with that?
Yeah. Yeah.
That doesn't really address texting, really. I mean, I
Communications,
want to be
I guess,
really
is fine.
explicit, yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Okay.
totally.
Okay, does anyone else have
Do
anything
we,
else
do we
on-
want to include social media, something a little broader than just texting, a little, because you
Why
want to
does
stay
it say
ahead of
just
the curve in
texting?
your policy when it comes to technology?
That probably is social media, makes more sense.
Any
Yes,
social media.
all
any
sorts of
social
stuff,
media publication, I think we should go a little bit broader than
Where does it say
cyber.
texting?
It doesn't, that
It
was,
doesn't.
yeah, that was, yeah.
That's what I'm thinking.
You think cyber whatever doesn't, like that term
I
doesn't
think
include
we
social
should hit
media?
social media in there, in which case in the
It could be
format.
Twitter, it could be Snapchat, it could be.
It does say to an internet website, if there was a definition that got redlined.
And I think I like the word social media, like Stephanie said, because
Think ahead, because
something
whatever we
could
don't have today
technically not
maybe.
be on an internet website, it could just be an app, like that's maybe too specific.
Can we, like, call it electronic communication?
I like that.
Because you never know what the next
Absolutely,
year.
that's what I'm thinking. That's where
Yeah,
I'm
the
going.
most forward-thinking words we can come up with to encompass
So I
anything
know
that
in
they
our,
could do
in
to.
our student behaviors, we call it a lot of electronic communication, so we can include
Wireless devices, yeah, all that,
anything,
yeah.
anything, not just, because if they don't put it on a webpage or it's not social
Correct,
media,
no,
but
I
they have
agree
it on
with
their
you.
phone.
Telecommunications, whether it's social
Not
media.
technology policies, you said electronic communication.
Yeah, I like
So
that
do
word.
that electronic
Yeah.
communications, yeah.
Okay.
Much
Works for me.
broader terms.
Hey, anybody have
That's-
anything
that's
else
why we
on
have these student
5517
Real
or
quick.
551701?
Yes, ma'am, real quick, we have some teachers that have some cases where they're brought forward sexual harassment claims against them, and then they're found to not be true and they were used as a leverage point. Do we have anything to go back on the person that actually made the sexual harassment claim to do it in a bad way? Do we have anything
Yes.
to protect that?
Are we talking about adult or child?
Both.
Both, really.
I mean, I'm just concerned holistically, I've seen it.
Yes.
And adult,
Yes.
there are adult policies as
In
well,
our
like
3000s.
filing, yeah, in our
The
3000s,
false
filing
complaints
false
or something.
complaints.
Okay, so we're solid on that. Okay.
Students as well.
We're solid, but in fairness, it's really difficult to hold a child accountable to prove that they didn't know it. So the policy's there, just.
I know, it's just, it's something that's
hard.
you know, sometimes some people's lives get turned upside down.
100%.
And you guys do a great job of that.
100%.
I just, you know, as long as it's there. Okay, thank you, I'm done.
Okay, we're gonna move on to policy 6510 on payroll authorization, which will be presented by Dr. Green.
This policy is being revised to clarify the procedures regarding salary adjustment for employees within the same salary grade of the annual salary schedule adopted by the board. Other changes include the addition of formatting to be consistent with other policies, and these proposed revisions encompass the suggested language from Neola. So, quite simply, there is a new process by which the superintendent or designee is authorized to approve any salary adjustments within the same salary grade that's annually adopted by the board, and it refers to all employees who are part of a bargaining unit are paid in accordance with the terms of the collective bargaining agreement.
This was well needed, so thank you very much for putting this together.
Are we okay with the designee? Shouldn't it just be the superintendent? Because then designee becomes somebody else. That was my fear, I wrote it down. Because it could be any, who is the designee?
So in this particular case, the superintendent is the one who usually, has he designated that authority to Carol, or Beth?
It says
Freudian
designee only as needed on the form. So if there were.
So let's say he was out of town.
Yes.
How many salary adjustments do we have to make because the superintendent's out of town? That we have to, I mean, here's my fear, is that if the designee is, all of a sudden, we run into the same problem we had before, right?
Well, let's hypothetically say the superintendent is taking leave for illness or something.
And the deputy superintendent would then become a superintendent. We would have a process for that.
And we usually do, usually there's an email that goes out that says, in my absence, so-and-so is hereby
ironclad.
That's an illness. What we're dealing with is something that happened before, that's real.
Can we,
touchy.
have in here somehow, can you word it so that, like, the superintendent has to, like, sign somewhere that he's designated somewhere that.
And notify the board?
Or
Yeah.
notify the board, or like, this, we need something a little stronger here.
That,
We're kinda hashing, I don't know, we're still.
so are you talking about, so the process does have a form that includes the superintendent's signature or designee currently? Are you talking about in policy or in form?
Right, that's helped strengthen.
Yes.
But if the superintendent was
You want the
supposedly
How,
unavailable.
what if we say the superintendent may designate, or if it says the superintendent or designee is authorized to approve, in this instance, the superintendent must designate that authority in writing, or something like that. Is that kind of what you're
Because
looking for?
okay, so the fear is that someone comes back and says, but the superintendent told me,
Right.
because we've had that before, that it was okay. And we have no paper trail, and it's he said, she said, or
It's
he
exa-
said,
I mean,
he
it's
So we need
said.
something in writing then, the word
This
is
does
in
not,
writing.
this does not fix the issue that we had before. to a
It's
degree.
better, but it's not,
Better, but
it's not.
And how much variation is within a salary grade?
That was the next question I had.
Broad?
It
They
depends.
have a
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it depends on the schedule itself, so under your salary schedule, some might only be a few $100s, but some have a beginning, a midpoint, and an end that might vary by thousands. But each one of them is annually adopted by the board, so,
But I believe that's our job to fix that on that level, like when we vote to approve that range.
But this doesn't.
Doesn't give us that opportunity.
So what if it says, what if I take out the word designee, what if it says, the superintendent is authorized to approve any salary adjustments for employees within the same salary grade of the annual salary schedule adopted by the board? In the event the superintendent is unavailable, he or she may specifically designate this authority.
By signature,
In writing.
in writing.
Yes, will that work?
Twice.
In blood.
Do we
First-
have that the
first-
So
superintendent's
how does
putting
that
this
look?
in writing?
Dr. Mullins leaves and he says, I am
I thought it was
giving
the designee would be.
Beth Betty my
No.
right to sign
Authority to
salary
make it
grade
like a-
increases. and
Right.
decreases.
Would that help? Because the form has been, and we've been using this form for well over a year. The form has been revised to
Why would
include the superintendent's signature.
Why would a salary adjustment be so time critical that a designee would need to do it?
That's,
What-
that,
what-
yeah. And I think Dr.
I don't think
Mullins
they're time
I
critical. Are
agree.
they time critical?
What's that?
Salary adjustments?
If a superintendent took a month off, could someone wait, could you even backdate an adjustment?
Yeah, you can.
Right, could you? If you were like, I promised it on the 15th,
What we would like is you to make the call on all salary adjustments. We get kind of fearful when you say designee because it kind of creates some cloud.
So can we just want to take out the or designee designation? Or
That would make me very happy.
Take out
but
or
I don't wanna
designate.
I don't want to handcuff Dr. Mullins.
everybody okay with just taking
I
that
don't have
part
a
out?
problem with removing designee.
I'm fine with taking designee out, I still have concerns about
Yes.
within the same salary range.
Yeah, but because if it's thousands of dollars versus a couple hundred, is there a,
I think that's the superintendent's job, is to his employees. I mean,
Okay.
we've set the schedule. I mean, somebody's gotta determine.
and some of the schedules are contractual as well.
How much of a pain in the butt is it to have a list of all salary adjustments?
You have them on your website. You can go to compensation services. Oh, salary adjustments, I'm sorry. I thought you said salary schedules. I
I think
apologize.
that's what Belford's going towards is.
There haven't been any since I've been superintendent. so-
And we had like 12 on, when we pulled that report from RSM, RSM had like 12 over the last 2 years or something, I mean, that's a, was it, no?
I don't think so, no.
I remember the form that they sent me, it fit in.
Is there that many?
Yeah, on the report from RSM. That's one of the first things that they.
It fit in a box, right? There was a box and then a couple on
And they
another
gave
page, so.
every single.
There were
One
some
recommends.
people that were doing it more often than others. And that's where that, I think that.
More
came from.
designees.
But I
How-
think
how does-
this policy came, we've had conversations of, do we, as a board, want to sit there and have to vote on every single one, or do we want to give the superintendent the authority to do that, which is what
Only
this
within
change
the
is.
salary schedule.
Right, within what we've already voted on.
So, to the extent it's helpful, of course, when all of this happened, we reached out to a number of districts and did this is a standard practice, but the majority of them, I couldn't find any that actually has it written into policy. Like it's a standard practice for the superintendent to be able to make those adjustments within the salary
Or
grade.
designees.
What was particularly deficient in our practice as a district was there was no verification that the superintendent had committed or approved that.
Right, but this as written could get you out of verifying. Like this is you or your designee, and so we want to take out designee because we want
Agreed.
you to be the fall guy.
Wow, sorry.
He still is ultimately with designee, because it still comes
Yeah.
back to him. Yeah.
Not necessarily. I mean, ultimately, technically, but no, not really. This
Okay.
way, his signature has to be on there, and if it's not, then if somebody did it without his signature, they are clearly to blame.
Plus
Okay.
it sends a stronger message and a stronger policy for that.
But I'm okay with him making those decisions. I'm not sure Ms. Belford is. You want board approval on every single salary adjustment within the range? Ms. Belford? Okay, I just didn't know because your back was to me. I couldn't read your face.
Yeah, what's the fear?
I don't think it is.
My presence?
I don't have fear with our current superintendent.
Yeah. I don't either, but I'm afraid of what happens when they're gone. And I agree with you, like that was the two things that I wrote down.
Do you know of any other board in the state that has to approve every salary adjustment of every employee?
Yeah, that's why I said it's not,
That sounds
it's a
like-
common practice for the superintendent to do it, it's just they don't have it codified into policy. But that's what happens.
So you hope that.
And I don't know, maybe it's not that we need, that the board doesn't have to approve every salary adjustment, but I'm concerned about within the same salary grade, you know.
Yeah.
Dr. Mullins decides to leave us and we hire another superintendent in here that decides that he or she is really a fan of the leading and learning department. And wants to bump everybody the maximum within the salary grade and not notify anyone that that's the plan.
There is no
That could be the end of
salary
his
pay for
life.
that.
He needs to be able to do that to run this organization and have it productive and efficient, in my opinion. I don't mind it putting in there that board chair or board needs to be notified, but I don't think we should have to approve.
Well, the board
Ms. Belford,
approves the salary grade.
The grade,
into
yes,
each-
and then you
each
give him the
employee
flexibility
goes.
to say, I really want to give leading and learning, I wanna push them on the higher end, cause that's my priority as a superintendent, where the next one says, student services is my priority.
Athletics.
Give a coach. Somebody push them to the top of their grade. They can't go crazy.
No, just Phil Maharis.
Oh,
I'm
If we
gonna tell
didn't
them
have,
that he gets a
if we didn't have to say over the
The board said-
range, I guess I refer to private sector in this way, that's the way it's done in private sector, like the ranges are set, and then the boss of that department necessarily can move, give their employee raises within that range, they can't go crazy, but they.
Just know if there are any issues, it's gonna fall back on the board and the board's gonna have to go, oh, I didn't know.
Yeah, well, how about I'm okay with the notification in there, like, especially if it's like, you've done something towards the higher end.
Any salary adjustment over $1,000.
Dr. Mullins, do you have an opinion on that?
I don't have a problem with notifying the board or the chair
Do you wanna
or.
get monthly, quarterly?
Well, if he's never done one in a year and a half, I think
Right.
as done, right? I'm about to do this.
So-
If there turns out there's 20 a month, then, maybe they're done monthly or something, but as of right now,
So we can add at the end, and shall provide notification to the board.
in a timely manner, within 30 days, what?
I don't know how
Do you
long.
want it prior?
30 days?
Be as an
Prior
email,
before
it's
it,
a
okay.
whatever, please be advised that, right?
Yeah, it doesn't
30
have to be
days.
in.
30 days is
Okay.
fine.
Within 30 days.
So I'm
That
gonna add at
way-
the end.
But what if you are like, oh my gosh, no way?
Regular fees. Then we hold the superintendent.
Accountable in
Right.
his, yeah. We think you're doing a bad job because you gave somebody
Not
a
talking
raise
about you,
and
Dr.
it's bad.
Mullins, talking about potential of the
Hypothetical
future.
way future.
So
Okay,
this
anybody have
policy
anything else
would-
in that tiny little policy that we just spent?
Yeah.
Half hour on?
This is a good one. The one before this was amazing.
What number is this? This is 6510?
That was 65.
But I mean,
Okay.
it's like, these are some-
No,
Mr.
you
Susan, do you have anything else on 6510?
No, ma'am, go.
Okay. Looks like we're ready to have rule development. Did you have some?
Nothing.
workshop portion of the meeting. These 6 policies were initially discussed and reviewed at the August 13th policies work session. Following the executive summary of each, opportunity for public comment will be held. Dr. Green, will you please provide us the executive summary for the proposed revisions to Board Policy 3122?
Yes. This policy is being revised to update the contact information for the district compliance officers to identify the areas of non-discrimination and anti-harassment that will be handled by each compliance officer, inclusion of retention of investigative records, materials, language, and other changes in compliance with applicable Florida law. Particular areas of revision include the following: title change to include non-discrimination, contact information and designate areas of non-discrimination and anti-harassment for each compliance officer, and the addition of a retention of investigatory records and materials section. The proposed revisions encompass the suggested language from Neola.
Is there anyone who has come to speak on Board Policy 3122, Equal Employment Opportunity? Is there anyone here today who has come to speak on Board Policy 3122, Equal Employment Opportunity? Board, any questions or comments? Ms. Moore, will you please provide the executive?
Was there anything different from the last time? I don't think this was.
Nothing from the last time,
Okay.
no.
We the minor edits, I think we did the website was the compound word.
Okay, good.
Ms. Moore, will you please provide the executive summary for the proposed revisions to Board Policy 5330?
This policy is being revised due to the requirements of Section 1006.062, Section 8 Florida statute, which provides that each district school board shall adopt a policy and procedure for allowing a student who is a qualified patient, as defined in Section 381.986, to use marijuana obtained pursuant to that section. Such policy and procedure shall ensure access by the qualified patient, identify how the marijuana will be received, accounted for, and stored, and establish processes to prevent access by other students and school personnel whose access would be unnecessary for the implementation of this policy, and other changes in compliance with applicable Florida law. Particular areas of revision include the following: procedures for storage of emergency medication, language pertaining to medical marijuana, and the addition of legal guardian terminology. These proposed revisions encompass the suggested language from Neola, as well as input from internal stakeholders and the community. And just a reminder, Neola did not have language pertaining to medical marijuana.
Okay, is there anyone here who's come to address the revisions in Policy 5330, use of medications? Is there anyone here who's come to address the revisions in Policy 5330, use of medications? Board, any questions or comments?
Are you gonna share with us the changes, the way we make changes?
Amy? Yes, I am. Let me go through my written notes because that's what I have. We made a couple edits to, policy, let's see, section K5. I don't remember what we did, but.
We took out the field trip restriction and just said that we can't use it on a school bus.
That's exactly right, thank you. And we made changes to Form D. At the front, we took out, remember originally it said, these proposed revisions encompass the suggested language from Neola, and they don't, because Neola doesn't suggest that we make this policy at all.
So are we allowing them on field trips but not on buses? Is your presentation?
State actually prohibits use on buses.
Right. Correct. The same process will apply. The parent will have to, not the parent, I want to make sure to use the correct terminology. The registered caregiver will make arrangements with the principal to determine the appropriate place for the administration of the medical marijuana.
Perfect.
Yep, okay.
At what point does this show procedure option number 1 or option number 2, what we've chosen?
You guys, at the last session, decided to do on campus, so pretty much procedures option B should no longer be.
It's not there. It shouldn't be there anymore. We
Shouldn't be
should
there.
have just the administrative procedures that are there, or just the version 1, the on-campus administration.
I still have version number 2.
Online?
On the agenda.
Yeah, the agenda has version 1
Okay,
there too.
we'll remove a version.
I don't know if
2.
that's on the public version, from the website.
Anybody have anything else about 5330, use of medications? Okay.
I will tell you that Patricia Montana had a whole presentation to give if you wanted it.
Nope.
Okay.
Unless she feels like she has to.
No, I
I do not.
I
It's
think
up there
we're
if you
good.
need
We
it.
spent a lot of time
Yeah,
on
we
it last
did.
time. I think it's
Yes.
right where we all want it. So
All right.
let's move on to Mr. Novelli, Chief Operating Officer, will provide us with the executive summary for the proposed revisions of policy 8405. Mr. Novelli.
This policy is being revised to clarify the procedures regarding school safety, security, threat assessment teams, and other changes in compliance with applicable Florida law. Particular areas of revision include the following: school safety and security plan, school safety specialist responsibilities, board responsibilities, best practices, active assailant response procedures, persistently dangerous schools, victims of violent crime, and threat assessment teams. These proposed revisions encompass the suggested language from Neola.
So this was the one that we had to change the statutory revision citation, remember? That's been changed. It was 365-161, it's not 365-171, and I let Neola know that it was wrong and they've changed it on their template.
Are we the only school board that told them?
Yeah, we are, and I offered
Only
again
ones
to
doing our
take a
job.
discount on our, and I got no response.
Finder's fee.
So, some of the other things we did, we made it said Florida Safe Schools Assessment Tool, we put in parentheses FSSAT. We also did, we just changed some major of and ands, capitalization, took out some spaces, so nothing else was major.
Does the board have any questions before I ask if there's any public comments?
Didn't we want to change the frequency of the bringing everyone into the school? Do you remember that?
Isn't that what you just said, addressed with the?
We made it consistent with FSAT completion, so when we looked at it, there was no,
Well,
so.
I'd like to address something there, though.
Yeah.
When you asked before what that was connected to, I made the assumption that was connected to FSAT, and so we made the suggested change in language to say once or annually connected with FSAT. Since that time, I did do some research with some statute and found where this apparently is coming from, and it's in statute, let me find it again here. 1006.07, paragraph 8. And was able to share that with Amy a little bit, and it says safety in construction planning is the title. It doesn't refer to FSAT. So safety in construction planning, and the wording is interesting because it's a little different than the take that we had on it the last time we met. It says a district school board must allow the law enforcement agency or agencies that are designated as first responders to the district's campus and schools' campuses to tour such campuses once every 3 years. Any changes related to school safety and emergency issues recommended by a law enforcement agency based on a campus tour must be documented by the district school board. And so it seems to me that the intent there is to make sure that we will allow them to come onto our campuses at least once every 3 years. As we're going through the FSET assessment, and our schools are finishing that up right now, as a matter of fact, and I've had a chance to talk with a couple of principals recently. I had the opportunity to talk with Major Walters just this morning. And I asked him to come in if he would address a little bit of the concern that we have there. But we have not only 11 different municipalities for law enforcement, but 11 different municipalities for fire and rescue. And their interest in coming in, according to this state law, we need to allow that at least once every 3 years. The question I really think is the decision point is, do we want to say, as policy, we're requiring them to come in every year, which is what the board directed last time, and that may create a hardship on some of these personnel. Can you speak to that, Mr. Walt?
Come on over.
Yes, I think we have to be careful with school board policy because we don't have the authority, Amy, jump on in here anytime you want, to mandate another organization, i.e. law enforcement, to do something. This has been a very daunting task, to say the least, to meet the FSAT requirements, which is to come at arrival, during school, dismissal, and also they want us to come at night. And that's law enforcement and fire rescue. And Merritt Island, for example, we've got 8 different schools there. And the fire rescue folks said that, look, our demands on our job are so much that we can't go to every school and spend hours at end walking that campus and making that evaluation. So that's a challenge for Merritt Island. I can tell you with staff, we're pulled. It's tough. And we're using our sergeants and other SROs to switch roles, switch schools for a day, walk that campus, and we're getting very creative to meet that state requirement. But going to the agencies, if you go to Merritt Island, you have East Precinct for the Sheriff's Office, you have anywhere between 8 to 10 deputies assigned to a day shift. They rotate constantly. So be realistic to say every working public safety official will walk that campus and be familiar with it during a calendar year is completely unrealistic. It won't happen. You'll have it in policy, but it's not going to happen.
Well, we're not
It's
asking
gonna be very difficult.
everybody from the agency walk it, but,
Although that would be great.
yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're
Just giving you a hard
essentially
time
accomplishing
when
that.
you
I think it's the language in there
Is
is
it really
that.
that hard to go walk through the school? I'm not talking about everybody doing an evaluation, but is it that hard for them one time in 365 days to go browse through their local school to make sure they're familiar with how the layout is?
I think the misconception here is if we go to a school right now for a critical incident, we just had members of our SWAT team walk Vieira High School to help out with their assessment. When they respond to that critical incident, they're going right to that critical incident. They're not going to remember where the auditorium was at necessarily. I've been in Vieira High School, I can't tell you how many times, and done presentations. The other day I was there and I had to go pick up my bag for Leading and Learning for a presentation, and we had to meet in the media center. I had no clue where the media center was at. But if there's a critical incident in that media center, we've got fish plans for all of our schools with our dispatch centers. They're on our mobile data terminals. We've got an SRO there. We've got support staff and district security. We're guiding resources in. So I don't think it's necessary. I know it sounds crazy, but what are we trying to achieve with that?
Can we say allow annually? I mean, that's not forcing anybody to do anything, but why would you say
Yeah.
allow? Because that sounds like it's limiting them to
When we
3
mandate
years.
it, I think we're.
We
I
can't
think- yeah.
mandate you to do anything, we can mandate maybe you to do something, but we can't mandate.
I know, but if it's an expectation you all will have of the district and the superintendent to make sure this is done, that's a lot. That's a big mandate that I don't think is going to be achieved.
So part of when I made a big push on this before was the fact that we had an incident, and not so much for security incidents, where's this, where's that, but we had an incident at Vieira High School last year where the ambulance couldn't find out how to get to the back portion of Vieira High School, and that ambulance/fire place was across the street from Vieira High School, and they took them 13 minutes to get to that kid while they were trying to chest bump him. So I think that's where my concern was, is that if we don't have responding local agencies knowing where, not even so much in a security incident where there's a gunfire, but also just an incident, critical incident on the campus. That was where my mind was. So if you're saying that there's a way to accomplish that, I'm all for it. I've seen that a couple of times as a teacher too, where they try to locate it and they're circling the parking lot, they can't figure out where to go. So.
Well, I can't speak to that with fire rescue folks. I can just tell you, every year we're mandated by statute to give them all fish plans, updated fish plans for the schools. So they have it right at their fingertips, so not to know where.
Right at their fingertips, what does that mean?
That's right there at their NBTs.
A fish plan isn't gonna show where gates are, right? It's
And the
gonna show the
gates
buildings.
change year to year. We don't want a disaster happening because the car is like, oh, the back gate's locked. Oh, the front gate. Oh, we can't get. I mean, oh, they put a gate in here. It wasn't here on my fish plan from last year. Like,
Fish
Well,
don't have gates.
yeah,
How do we do
it's your call. I'm just saying, I don't want to see you set yourself up that it doesn't get accomplished. I could send you to a school in the north end. I don't know if you're familiar with Pinewood, and we can have an emergency in the library or into another section, and you've only been up there once, and it was 11 months ago. Well, you know where that location is on that school. from your memory from touring it? The answer is no.
Maybe it's access though. Maybe you know that you can get in through the side street because you at least remember where the gates are.
Someone still has to be
Well,
there to let
like I
them
said,
know.
I can't comment on fire rescue of not knowing where a gate's at for a football field. That's kind of bizarre to
No,
me,
it was
but.
the back, it wasn't a football field, it was the
Gotcha.
back field.
Okay.
No, but even say Satellite Beach.
But I can
that's
tell
a
the
football
patrol
field so far,
deputies
you get
and
called to
officers
school.
know their schools.
2 miles away.
You know, they know Madison, they know Satellite High School, they know Bayside, they know the side streets and how to set up perimeters. And we've got a lot more tools within our dispatch centers to respond to critical incidents. I don't know how much more important it is to go and personally tour it because you're not gonna remember the complete layout of that. That's the reason why we give them the visuals.
Can you read us what it was before we guys changed it, and which number we're at, because I got lost somewhere in here.
Okay, so, we're in B1E.
Okay.
All right, and
So-
this, what I've highlighted in blue is what you asked for at the last session. Prior to that,
Yeah, I felt a little.
okay, instead of saying annually consistent with FSAT completion, it said once every 3 years.
That's what the statute currently says, actually.
And that's what, yeah. And the other concern I had, and I was talking with Andy earlier about, was that some of our principals are running into some difficulty scheduling fire rescue people to come into their schools. And fire rescue is having some difficulty meeting the need of all 90 plus of our schools getting in there to help out. So allowing them to come in annually, you know, is great. Requiring them to come in is kind of a tough thing for us to put in policy.
I mean, allowing at least gives more flexibility. I'm fine with allowing. I just want, guys, you okay with
Yeah.
allowing?
I am,
Yep.
yes.
Just-
Everybody good with allowing?
So change the word conduct to allow.
Yes.
Okay, there, allow.
And do we need to take out consistent with FSAT completion?
Yeah, I think I would, because I don't know that this is necessarily connected to FSAT. As I said, it's in a section called Safety and Construction Plan.
Did you guys hear that? So
No.
removing the section of consistent with FSAT completion.
I think that makes sense.
That's fabulous.
Did you catch that, Amy?
So no, say one more time,
Strike
sorry.
coordinating with, and make it allow, and strike consistent with FSAT.
Coordinate, or allow, no, coordinate with, or to allow and to not conduct, right?
Yes.
I think you can just say allow appropriate public safety agencies that are designed to a school's campus to conduct.
Okay.
Just strike coordinating with and change it to allow.
Does anyone have any more questions, comments, or concerns with?
So we're gonna leave it
8405?
annually, but we're changing to allow.
Correct. Does
Okay.
anyone have any other questions, comments, or concerns? Is there anyone here who's come to address the revisions of policy 8405, school safety? Is there anyone here who has come to address the revisions of policy 8405, school safety? Ms. Moore, will you please provide the executive summary of policy 5112?
5112 entrance requirements. This policy is being revised to clarify the entrance requirements for students entering the district for the first time and other changes in compliance with applicable Florida law. Particular areas of revision include the following: defines parent legal guardian requirements to disclose student information related to prior school expulsions, arrests resulting in charges, juvenile justice actions, and corresponding referrals to mental health services by the school district that the student previously attended. The registration forms have already been revised to incorporate the statutory requirements. These proposed revisions encompass the suggested language from Neola. And you do not have any edits that we made during our work session on the 13th.
Does anyone have any questions or comments? Ms. Moore, no. Is there anyone here who has come to address the revisions of policy 5112, entrance requirements? Is there anyone here who has come to address the revisions of policy 5112, entrance requirements? Mr. Novelli, will you please provide the executive summary to the board for proposed revisions on policy 8407?
Yeah, Section 1006-12, paragraph 5, Florida statute requires the superintendent notify BCSO in the Office of Safe Schools immediately after, but no later than 72 hours after, A, a safe school officer is dismissed for misconduct or otherwise disciplined, and B, a safe school officer discharges his or her firearm in the exercise of the safe school officer's duties other than for training purposes. This policy is being revised to include notification to the Office of Safe Schools as required under Section 1006-12-5 Florida statutes effective July 1st, 2019 as a result of Senate Bill 7030. Neola's most recent template does not have the statutory language. So
But
we added
it
the
will.
6 words.
And we also added on this one too, remember at the last time, the board wanted the board chair to be notified as well. And so we added and the board chair. So not only is it Office of Safe Schools and the sheriff, it is also the board chair. Great, see where it says right there?
There you go, right
Any
there.
other board members have questions or comments
And the
on
board chair.
policy 8407? Is there anyone here who's come to address the revisions in policy 8407, safe school officers? Is there anyone here who's come to address the revisions in policy 8407, safe school officers? Ms. Moore, will you please provide the executive summary for proposed revisions to board policy 5540?
5540, the school and community agencies. This policy is being revised to clarify the procedures regarding requests by outside agencies to interview students and/or conduct investigations. The proposed revisions also make changes to terminology, formatting, and other changes in compliance with applicable Florida law. Particular areas of revision include the following: name change to the schools and investigations involving students, clarifying procedures on how to handle requests to interview students from outside agencies, creation of a new form, 5540F1, notice to not contact parent legal guardians regarding official investigation, creation of administrative procedures, 5540, quick reference chart for visits and requests to interview students or requests for records. These proposed revisions encompass the suggested language from Neola.
What did we change from last time?
The changes that you made were to section 4, C4.
C4?
We added, we changed school staff member to principal or designee for each time because we wanted to make sure it was consistent with our other ones. So C4, the beginner, it is up to the investigator whether to allow the principal or designee who is known by the child to be present.
Mine
or
still
designee
says
to
school
be-
staff member on my clean version.
So does, mine.
Did we not upload the right one? I don't know. The copy that I have, the clean version that I have, or the red line that I have has that.
Me too.
Let me make sure I'm looking at the right, yeah, it says clean version. And then, it still says,
It says the principal or designee may request to remain in the room, but it says the investigator whether to allow
No,
school
we
staff member.
changed the school staff member, we changed the principal or designee. Where is this from? Is this on our
The
agenda
agenda.
or is it
The
on
agenda.
Okay, so we'll have to change it in the agenda because if you go to the policy, the board policy place, it says revisions, that packet's been revised. I don't know that this one has.
Even on A and B, because I was thinking that we left school staff member because the investigator could advise someone that would.
Well, we still have the principal or designee because that designee could be the school staff
Okay,
member.
gotcha.
What else did we change? Anything else?
No. Anything else was that? No, we did not.
Okay, anybody have any more questions or comments? Is there anyone here who's come to address the revisions in policy 5540, the school and community agencies? Is there anyone here who's come to address the revisions in policy 5540, school and community agencies? Thank you, Ms. Enval, Ms. Moore, Dr. Green, Dr. Betty, who's not here, and Mr. Novelli for your diligence in this policy revision process. Hearing are there any further business? Hearing there's no further business, this meeting is now adjourned.
How does this get turned off?
yeah.
We have to pull it out of the ceiling.
But the camera is still, the camera's on.
Can somebody give Mike the?
Okay,